Hey everyone, Head here from Phoenix Edge RPG Podcast, and I want to give you a quick rundown of what this video is going to be. Essentially, my co-host Stan on the podcast, he's gone through this past year's worth of podcast episodes, and he's pulled out what he feels is the very best of all the Final Fantasy VII Remake conversations that we've had, and oh my, we've had a lot of them. But he's pulled out the very best, and he's compiled it all here in one long video. In addition, he's gone through and put in these little, kind of synopsis slides in between each clip to just kind of give you an idea of where these conversations are taking place and what we're talking about, just to kind of further keep you in the loop. So keep in mind, this is speculation before the remake has actually come out yet, so we may get something wrong, but that's part of the fun, right? Seeing what we got right, what we got wrong. Let us know in the comments if there's something in particular you were impressed that we got right, or you can call us out in the comments about, whatever we got wrong too. That's all fair game. We appreciate it all around. And other than that, Stan's put in some Final Fantasy VII music. I was about to say remake, but regular OG music under these clips as well to accompany the conversations. And I think he had a lot of fun making this. So I hope you all enjoy. And oh man, this game's coming out in a few days here, and I cannot wait to play it. It's looking pretty good, so I'm excited. We will catch you all later.
This is revolutionary. Look at this is revolutionary.
Okay, I like it. Let's do it.
I just broke the code. Look at 0.24 seconds.
24?
Yeah, 24. Now look at the menu. Look at L. It says L1 shortcuts, and your Cloud, right? And Cloud has, if you look at the right, he has 1 bar out of 2.
Yeah.
And if you look at the actual menu on the left, it's the same. It's the same.
It also has 1 bar out of 2.
Okay, so right here, yeah.
So, if
that was a good catch.
Braver, you're going to use one of those bars, right? And Barrett and Tifa has 2 bars, so you can switch to those, and you can set up their skills, and you can switch back. This means that if you use one of those potions or one of that Braver, you're going to lose one of those blue bars. This is a straight up ADB bar, man. I feel as if magic, potions, limit breaks, everything is tied to the ATB bar. The only thing that's not tied to the ATB bar is the attacks and just moving around.
So whenever you use an item or use a special skill that you've assigned to there, it takes maybe one from this bar. Yeah. If you spam it too much, you'll lose both bars, and then the only thing you'll be able to do is attack.
Yeah, so it's basically Final Fantasy 12, but with more animations, and you're moving around. It's Final Fantasy 12. Yeah, that's what it looks like to me right now.
I would be a fan of that.
That would be amazing. That would be absolutely fantastic if that's what they did.
Itself. So I think when you hit attack, or maybe you defend or take damage from an enemy, your bar's building up, and then you can choose a special command to go on top of the attack. I think more of my question is, how do you control all 3 with that? Are the 3 just going to AI attack?
And that's why I wonder, is it going to be a Gambit type setup like 12 had also, where you could strategically position what you want them to do?
I'm going to be really unpopular here, and I'm going to say that I hope that they don't do anything except when you give them the command. So you're running
just stand there?
No, they run around, they crack and they dodge, right? Because that's the basic thing. But once the bar fills up, you have to actually press R2 and go to Barrett and give him a command if you want him to cast a potion or do his big shot or whatever. And then you just change right back, and then you just give new commands, because that means that you actually have to be engaged with the actual gameplay at all times, right? Mm-hmm. And I'll be totally fine with that, because I understand that there's certain people who like the planning aspect of playing RPGs, where they're okay, I set up Gambit, yeah. I want to be I'm in the menu, and then I just plan everything out, and then I just watch it play out like a football game or something along those lines. But I actually appreciate being there in the moment and giving the commands, right? I'm more I want to be the general on the battlefield when it's happening. I don't want to be the person. I don't want to be Tyrion Lannister in the throne room, right? Okay, okay. This is what the battle plan looks like. Okay, here's the battle plan. Let's just see how it pans out, right?
Well, you can still like in the middle of battle transition to that character and like change things. But yeah, I see what you're saying. You don't want to. You want to be more focused also, in the moment. Yeah. Yeah.
The less time I'm spending in the menu planning the battles, and the more time I'm spending actually doing the battle, the better it is.
I agree. That's a hybrid. I think works because it's not it's still giving everything of the traditional turn-based game, but it brings in a little bit of a dynamic that you can control the character and make it feel like you're part of some action sequence. I think this is what they mean when they're like, it's not going to be heavily action focused like 15 or Dissidia or Kingdom Hearts 3. It's going to be like very grounded combat still.
Mentioning here is that when you look at the characters moving, because we're getting a lot of quick cuts here between the characters doing skills, right? So we're not actually getting that many cuts that you would like. If you think back to the Kingdom Hearts 3 trailers, you would see kind of like the characters running around in combat a lot between the combos, right? There are no cuts of that happening whatsoever in this trailer, right? And instead, what you see is, for instance, when Cloud is blocking and when Barrett is firing, they're actually kind of walking, right? Barrett walks and fires, like he walks slowly. It's not Kingdom Hearts, right? If you look at those details, that's not like how Kingdom Hearts battles flow at all, right? Because you're constantly moving about, you're constantly jumping and doing your aerial attacks and stuff like that. I feel as if that might, like, this might be it, right? That you can move around, you can do attacks and stuff like that, but it's kind of tied to a kind of pathfinding system where if you press attack, Cloud zooms over and whatever, and then you have to expend the bars to do like the skills and stuff. It's not going to be, it's not going to be that frantic thing from like the other action game.
This is the evolution that turn-based needed. It wasn't like it's not that turn-based is outdated, but the companies need to think to themselves is how can we make turn-based more dynamic and more engaging? And it's stuff like this that I feel like brings it up to that level. It's like, okay, do you think turn-based battles are boring? Then like let's pick it up a notch and make you feel like you're like in the full kind of control, like in a combat type of sense, but it's still turn-based. Like this is how you get modern audiences hooked into an old concept.
Yeah. Well, and really, honestly, like that's always been my biggest concern when I found out that it was going to be more action-oriented was just, having party-based combat with it being action based. Like I've always run into issues where like the other characters aren't doing what I want them to do. Either they're just spamming special moves, or they're not reviving me when I need to be revived, or they're just being sluggish to use a potion on me, and I'm just like yelling at the screen like, what are you doing? So I don't know, the fact that they're adding these kind of details in and it seems a little more nuanced, the fact that you can like transition between the characters seamlessly, I think that there's a lot of optimism from me for this gameplay.
Attacks, at least the standard circle attack that you can hit, has very little hit stun, like on the enemies, if any at all. Meaning you hit them and the enemies, they take damage, but they don't dagger and they don't have an animation that is like actually
that's a really good point.
So you can see it at 40 seconds, around the 40-second mark again, where they're attacking the turtle monster.
Mm-hmm. And he just kind of he takes the hit and he doesn't really push back.
Yeah, you can actually see if you do it really slow. He lunges forward and he does 2 hits, and then he comes over the top with a 3rd strike. And the monster is actually able to leap backwards towards Eris, like even though he's been hit by those initial 2 slashes. And it's almost like he's gone. He's already leaping back, but that 3rd hit still registers. So it still gives it to you, but it's just interesting that the monster still has all his options available to him, even though you're there pounding on him.
I think this is a small caveat to the battle system, because, like, all right, if we take the traditional, all right, you got Cloud with the Buster Sword, Barrett with the machine gun, and Tifa punching. Like, if you have all three of them attacking a monster at once, I'm sure the animation would be miserable.
It would be.
So I think there is a small, there's a small little penalty you have to take out for doing something like this.
Crisis Core, way too easy. That Zack's attacks with the sword caused hit stun to the enemy, but it was so much that you could launch another sword strike before the enemy could recover. So you could just sit there and just mash attack until the Shinra soldier was dead, and then it's like, okay, well, what good are all these material spells for then? You know, if I can just walk up to the enemy and just hit attack, he's dead. You know, onto the next one.
That's
so
very true.
At 24 seconds, that the editor was very careful to make sure that Cloud was already in mid-animation with Braver, so it wouldn't show that the ATV gauge was gone after he chose Braver.
It was already spent, like when we come to the shot,
Yeah, I think that's probably very deliberate. They didn't want to show, like, they're trying to show and not show as much as they can at the same time.
They want people making podcasts trying to piece it all together and do their own marketing for them, right? That's pretty much the idea.
But I think we cracked it. I actually think that cracked it. Like I did. I was constantly like looking at the right and looking at the left, but you actually have to look at both of them right together. Like you thought you were clever, but you weren't that.
Let's say that was a really good find. I don't think I've ever noticed that until you brought it up. So that's awesome. That it seems as if they've pretty much said that this was going to be primarily in Midgard. Do you all want to give some more thoughts on that?
If there's any point of the story that can be greatly expanded on, it is Midgard. So if there's, I can't say I'm too surprised that they're doing a full focus on this. And we have to remember there's a different definition of what is considered a full-length RPG. This could still be like a 25 and at most 40-hour game. But I do wonder what their definition of RPG is.
Yeah, but the thing that just bugs me is those 2 discs, right? Because that's a lot of space. 2 entire Blu-ray discs of content.
Yeah.
That's like how many games these days for the PlayStation release on 2 discs? That's just not a thing anymore.
The first gameplay they show here is the very first mission, the bombing mission, and it's the part where Barrett is running away in the back and leaves Cloud to fend for himself and fight the 2 soldiers. He goes up and hits them, and he hits both of them with like 1 sword strike. And we actually see some like hit stun on them, and he like launches one of them into the air with just his basic attack combo. So that was interesting because we didn't see anything like that in the first trailer. He was fighting stronger enemies that didn't flinch from being hit by the Buster Sword.
And that was one of the observations, that we had, was that when they hit the enemies, they didn't really react. They just kind of acted like it didn't even faze them.
At least the Shinra grunts in the very beginning, like, he just goes up to him right away, 1 hack, and then, like, one's on the ground to the right, and the other's, like, getting juggled up into the air. So, looks pretty cool.
Dude, that release date, too, March 3rd, 2020, that is such a bold release date, because typically with Square games is they like to put out a release date, and then they like to delay it like 2 months, 2 or 3 months, but that's going to put them right into another E3 season if they delay this thing, or it's going to be right before it, and it's going to have to compete. If they delayed it a month, it'll have to compete with Cyberpunk, I believe, because that got an April 2020 release date. So that's probably not the best time to release that. So, man, they're really sticking it to it. I thought for sure, they'd give it a January, then they would delay it till March or something like that. So they sound pretty confident.
It was great, but I also thought it was great that, when Cloud leans down to activate the bomb, then the guard scarping comes out, and Barrett turns to Cloud and points the gun arm at him and says, like, "Damn double crosser," something like that.
Yeah,
and I thought that was a really nice touch, because, like, in the original game, when sort of why like when they get into the reactor in the beginning, the Cloud and Barrett has a conversation, right? And Barrett kind of explains to Cloud what the reactor is doing, and I always interpreted that as not really Barrett explaining it as much as he's kind of guilt tripping Cloud. He's like, dude, you used to work for these tools and they're doing this to the planet and blah blah blah. And then Cloud says he doesn't care, and then Barrett says, you're coming with me, I'll keep my eye on you, right? Because it's kind of implied he doesn't trust Cloud, right? This is just some sellsword that he hired because Tifa asked him to, right? And the fact that he's actually keeping an eye on Cloud and he thinks Cloud double-crossed him in that moment, it's like they're building on a lot of those cues from the original game and fleshing them out. And I thought that was actually really smart. That was actually very good, well done.
Yeah, I mean, if you're greatly expanding on this game, I'm sure every aspect's going to get expanded on too, like the tension between Cloud and Barrett. I mean, it was definitely there in the original, so being expanded more upon I think is a good thing.
And there were just a lot of nice touches, like Cloud getting picked up by the guard Scorpion, and then Barrett saves his ass, and he's like, "Yeah, you better be grateful for that, right?" And I just felt like that's cool. They're kind of building up a relationship between the characters in the gameplay.
What I did like was that the Avalanche gang is actually having some moments where they're taking the gravity of what they've done and asking, was this really something we should have done? When they're showing where they blew up the reactor, they're seeing all the damage to the city, they're doubting that this was actually done by them. But I'm glad that they are having that moment where they get to say, okay, is this really something we should be doing? Because that's a very horrendous act, to blow something up like that, especially in 4K. That's going to be even more
Barrett
obvious.
Says himself that, there's going to be casualties for doing stuff like this, but the ends justify the means. So, if you look at it realistically, Shinra is an electric company that provides power and stuff for the people and stuff like that. I mean, there's obviously the lower plate stuff where they don't care as much about down there as they do with the upper plate, but they're looked upon as the good guys and such also, and in the way they are, because they are providing this type of lifestyle for people that makes it much easier. So you can kind of look at it from both angles. It's there are good people on both sides, and there's bad people on both sides also, prospectively, if you look at it from one to another. So you can kind of look at, because when they blow up that reactor, they did technically kill innocent people.
Yep. Yeah, and Shinra is a major employer of the city, so just like you alluded to, there's going to be a lot of innocent people that aren't really bad people. They just need a job.
Yeah, even the original game, Barrett's taunting this man who's just going to his job because he has to make a living. He's like, yeah, I work for Shinra, but I'm just an everyday guy. I have to feed my family and such. And then Barrett's just going on about you're working for pure evil. And it's
funny when the guy's sitting crying when Barrett Austin him and he punches the seat. He's like, "Don't!" And the guy's like, "Oh no!" That makes me laugh so bad.
Should never take the late train. Yeah,
that scene needs to be in the game. Barrett just going off on some random dude in the suit, being totally unhinged.
Although, I think that I'm surprised that we got 20 minutes roughly of content for them to show us. But again, I think that at this point, I'm more interested in how this story is going to be told and really telling me how they're going to fill out Midgard for a complete game. And that's really what I want to know at this point. And that's what I was hoping they were going to show us here. I am happy we saw Tifa. I'm happy that they actually showed us an entire boss fight. I thought that was really, really cool. I'm happy that they're having a demo that's playable, so we can get some more information on that. And I think they're focusing a lot on this gameplay aspect because there was so much concern over the fact that the game wasn't going to be turn-based. Maybe that they're trying to kind of ease audiences that know this gameplay is still going to be what you remember. It's just in a different way. But at this point, they gotta start reassuring us about the story here. It's kind of 3/4 way through the presentation. The camera zooms in on Aerith, and she's just sitting there praying or whatever, almost like the beginning of the game. And the camera zooms out on Midgard and really shows the scale of the city and the amount of detail. I thought that was really,
yeah. I was wowed.
I really, really like that shot. That was really, really cool.
If I were to say what I think is that I'm looking forward to it. I think it looks good. I'm more interested into it now than I was before. For that, like the battle system, like when I first saw it, it looked a lot like 15, and I was kind of worried that it was going to play exactly like 15. But now after seeing more of it there, it's like, well, yeah, this actually looks a lot better. A lot better. And another thing I do want to mention is that, like whenever you hear the word episodic, usually people think of like, the Telltale games where like if you bought one of their games, it's like, well, if you bought one of them on a disc, like it would only be like episode 1 would be on it, but then when you want to get the other episodes, you have to download them later or something. Mm-hmm. It's usually what people think of, and I think in this case, I don't think it's going to be like that. I think it's going to be more similar to like the .hack games on PS2, where, they released like copies of the games, and, you can actually transfer your data from one to the other and all that. And of course, they were released at different times. I think that's what they're going to do.
Yeah, that's probably a better model to frame this game as than some of the other examples you gave. Absolutely. I agree with that.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking of it either two ways. The one, they go like the .hack route, where you transfer your game from one to another. The other way I'm thinking it might go about is the Xenosaga route, where it's like three full RPGs, but they are technically all connected to each other.
Oh, that's a good point. I didn't think of that. And it's funny, too. That's like another one of my favorites,
Even
too.
Based on what little we know so far, we can see the kind of how it's a fusion, right, of the turn-based and action style. And that's something that most people feel that Square Enix has never really nailed. Just from seeing like the decision they've made to tie healing and like potions to the ATB bar, to me that's like, so we're already better than Final Fantasy 15, right? Which allowed you to, you just had a giant inventory of items, and at any time when you took damage, you could just use one. There's no penalty whatsoever for just having to spam items to get through a battle, right? That made it just so there's no sense of fear or doubt in the player. Like, you can be fighting an enemy, 20, 30 levels higher than you, but if you have enough high potions, like, you can win eventually. It's way too easy for the player to heal themselves, and so now there's no danger. Like, there's no present danger in these battles that, like, the player could actually lose.
Right.
But in FF7, you have a bar that is required to be full in order to heal yourself, but then that bar is also necessary in order to do decent damage, it seems. You know?
When I first saw that they tied using a potion to the ATB bar, I thought to myself, oh wow, like this isn't just, they're not just throwing this in here to, appease some of the old fans. This is actually going to be fairly strategic. And when we did get that explanation of how the gameplay worked at the E3 presentation, I was actually shocked, because prior to seeing that presentation, I was pretty much under the impression that party-based action RPG combat, with AI controlling your party members, I was pretty much under the biased opinion that it generally did not work. Usually you would get stuck with, I figured Barrett's machine gun arm was going to heat up when I didn't want it to, and he wasn't going to be able to fire, and they wouldn't be able to heal me when I needed to, or they would do something stupid that I didn't want them to. And, when I saw that they've added in that tactical element and the fact that like things are tied to the ATB bar, this seems like they've actually figured out a way conceivably to make it work. Job with the presentation and showing gameplay. Lots and lots and lots of gameplay. And you see it all the time. We may even get into this a little bit later in this podcast, where companies will just release these trailers. Square was really bad about this. They'll release this, awesome looking trailer, but it won't have any gameplay. And so, in many respects, their presentation on that front was fantastic. They had somebody out there explaining the gameplay and all these things. And, that was great. But then during the follow-up interviews, it's almost as if they showed too much because they weren't willing to give anything else in the interviews. Going forward, I'm sure they're going to start releasing more of that information and kind of clarifying some of these details we want to know. And so really, I think to really get me on board with this game, the one thing that they have to really sell me on, and I'll go ahead and accept the fact that, Midgard's been padded out to be 30 or 40 hours. I'll totally accept that. If they can sell me on the Sephiroth and Jenova story, it's obvious they're rewriting that. If they can sell me on that in a new way, a way that I haven't experienced, and they can make it to where it's just as satisfying, if they can sell me on that, I'll be totally in on this remake. And I think that, honestly, that's where this game's going to live and die, because they're changing that, and that's a core element of the game. That's the lore behind the game. That's the way your main character develops, is that relationship. So they really, really have to sell this Sephiroth and Jenova deal, in my opinion. We're going to be doing Final Fantasy VII spoilers, guys. So in order for us to talk about this, we're going to be spoiling the game. So just forewarn you, if you have not played Final Fantasy VII, you're excited about the remake because you want to play the game for the first time in the remade form. You may want to turn away, unfortunately, from our podcast. Come back later. The initial trailer that was shown at the Tokyo Game Show is basically a story trailer with some gameplay mixed in, but we're just going to go through this in like short little segments, kind of point stuff out that we noticed.
It just feels like something that's tacked on. Mm-hmm. Like they're going through the normal story by beats, and all of a sudden, oh, spooky ghosts. That's like, okay, spooky ghosts are gone. All right, back to the plot that we're all familiar with. It sounds. I mean, I could be completely wrong, but the way it looks like they just come out of nowhere, and it's just something annoying they have to deal with while going through the familiar beats of the story.
It's like a random encounter.
Yeah, almost.
Yeah, I'm sure it's like you said, connected to Sephiroth in some way, and that they may have felt they needed to add these to get Sephiroth's inclusion into Midgard, right? Because if they just have to have Cloud like hallucinating every 20 minutes you're playing the game to remind us that Sephiroth is there, that might be a little much.
Right.
So we don't know if these things are being controlled by him or Jenova or what the deal is with that. But it does feel just unnecessary from having the perspective of playing the original game many times, right? And Midgard is like paced out so well, like normally. Now, of course, they have to stretch out the game, so you have to have some more content in there anyway, based on their decision to make the first game all Midgard.
Do y'all want to move up to the lame motorcycle guy?
I do.
Okay, let me get him on the screen here. I've got some stuff to say about him, but I think we all have stuff to say about him. So Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, do you remember that like South Park episode where they're making fun of Family Guy by having like the seals like hit like little balls into the idea plate? Like I think Mora has a very similar thing where he has like a haircut, face, body type design, and it's just the seals just come up and put the design right in, and then boom, you have a new Nomura character, because this is one of the most generic looking characters he's made by far.
He looks like Joe Dirt with like a sword. Just like Jesus Christ, Nomura. Go back to
he doesn't have a strong presence in the story because He looks like someone who's already going to be very annoying.
I got some stuff I want to say, but Stan, do you want to give your thoughts on this guy?
Yeah, so Gladiolus's brother on the bike, right?
Yeah, they would get along.
Yeah.
Like his rejected cousin, more like.
I guess the only positive I have to bring out of this this bro here is it's probably a good idea to have Soldier more involved in the story, like other soldiers, because in the original, I believe you only encounter them as a regular enemy in the Shinra Tower, in the Shinra building.
Mm-hmm.
So to have them involved a little bit earlier in the story, and it would make sense that they would maybe kind of come down and try and track down Avalanche, or they would send like one soldier, right? Since Soldier is so great, like probably one of them is good enough to finish off these, terrorists that are just kind of hiding out in the slums.
Wouldn't it be kind of detrimental to Cloud's story though? Because this one is like a more prominent.
That's what I was wondering.
Isn't he going to like point out and be like, I've never seen you in Soldier before?
So they could play it off like, well, I don't know. Not everybody knows everybody in Soldier, like the big organization or something, But if they're not careful, they could give too much away, right?
A couple different thoughts. First thought was exactly like you guys have said. Hey, it's cool that they're expanding the story, and that soldiers should have more of a presence, right? Why are we only interacting basically with the Turks? Like, you would think there would be more elite warriors that he would send out to try to take care of Avalanche. So this makes a lot of sense. I like that. And if it kind of conflicts with the Cloud story, but I think they can work themselves out of it. And I like that part. Now, Cloud does say like he recognizes him as being a member of Soldier. So I don't know if that's because he just recognizes maybe like his armor or something like that. But he is able to identify this person isn't Soldier, which I guess isn't too difficult to narrow down given someone's chasing you and, they're not wearing this typical military attire. They're wearing their own thing. But the thing that I don't like about this character, and guys, if you like this trailer, trust me, the longer we get into this trailer, the more positive I'm going to get. But like, it's like the first half I don't like, the second half I do like. The thing is, this reminds me of Advent Children, right? He's doing a backflip or something on a motorcycle, and he's flailing a sword around his head like a helicopter almost, and while he's doing a wheelie, right? Yeah. And I'm like, dude, that is so dangerous. Why are you doing that? Stop. And then he's got this like evil laugh on his face. And I'm like, I want this guy to have more depth. Like the same reaction I had with Seymour the first time, WTF. And then it ended up being one of my favorite characters in Final Fantasy X because of the story they told. I hope that's what they do with this guy. But I have a feeling that he's just going to be some idiot with like an IQ of 10 that like regularly pops up and like wants to challenge Cloud. Like, yeah, but we don't know that. I have to acknowledge that. And I think it's really, really cool that they're exploring the fact that there are other members of Soldier and kind of filling in that gap, because that was something that didn't make sense in the original. So I'm glad that they're expanding on that. We got Cloud turning into a frog.
I did find it a little humorous that he has a little buster sword on the back of his.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You like have a little gun arm or.
So, if you pause the video right around 140 or like 141 maybe.
Okay.
It's kind of hard to tell, but the enemy in the background is the Sahagin, like the turtle guy.
Oh yeah.
Those turtle enemies with the trident.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that enemy can't use the frog spell in the original game. And you only encounter them in Midgard down below in the sewers.
It's a very good memory you have.
Yeah, my favorite game. So, but so the thing about this is, if you know that, the environment kind of looks like the sewers or somewhere underground.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Like
you can't totally tell. It's possible it could be somewhere else, but given the enemy, it makes me think it's the same location. And that makes me wonder why Barrett is there. Because...
Barrett's here? Oh yeah, he is here. He's right there.
Barrett is there. I can see his name at the top of the UI.
I thought this was. I thought that. Yeah, and I'm seeing him right on the screen too. I thought this was when Don Corneo he pulls a lever and you all fall down into the sewer. I just assumed
that's normally when you fight the Sahagin enemies down there.
So why is Barrett here? It must be somewhere else. They must have. Maybe there's more of these guys.
Either you can revisit that area for some reason with Barrett in your party later, or maybe this is like another sewer location. So there would be a second sewer dungeon that you have to use to get to somewhere else, some other part of the city or something.
That's a really good catch. I did not notice that at all.
Yeah, because otherwise there's no reason for Barrett to be there if this is the first sewer location.
Yeah, I mean, Barrett's not putting on a dress. Right into where you see President Shinra and his glorious hologram, which I'm a fan of. I thought this made a lot of sense. What did you guys think?
I mean, it's cool looking, but I take it this is going to be how he presents himself to us instead of personally showing himself there.
Yeah.
Which I guess makes sense because it's not very smart to put yourself in the line of fire. But at the same time, I think it does show that if you're personally there, that you have nothing to fear. That if you get to jump out of the helicopter and just say what you want and go back, even though there's a guy, there's 3 people there that have magic and range artillery to immediately take you down.
Right.
Like, he's still going out there and he has the power to intimidate you without you doing a damn thing about it. And then he gets in his helicopter and leaves. And now you got the hologram here. And now you kind of think to yourself, now maybe he's a little too afraid to give face-to-face weight too.
Yeah, he did lose weight. That's a good point. Yeah, I didn't even think of that. Yeah. What's he been doing? On the Atkins diet?
Huh? And now he definitely looks like Rufus's father.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, you know what? For this remake, I'm going to lose it. I'm going to lose the weight. Yeah. Anyways, I'm being silly, guys. Sorry. We see some more gameplay here. Do you guys have any thoughts on this?
Well, the enemy they're fighting, many other videos have already pointed this out, but it's a Eligor, which was like a chariot enemy that was actually a rare monster. I don't know how powerful this enemy is, but like they summoned Shiva to fight it. So I wonder if it's been turned into a boss rather than just a rare enemy.
You know what enemy I want to encounter? I want to encounter that house.
Yeah, the Hell House. Right?
Yes, the Hell House. That would be epic if they put the Hell House in there. Dude, that thing will wreck your world. Like the first time you're playing the game, and you're trying to grind, you're like, oh, I got this. I only got 100 HP. What the hell is happening? It's like exploding. It's got arms. It's like shooting missiles out the back. Dude, oh my God. I got so wrecked when I was like 12 playing that thing. We have Eric's favorite scene, probably my favorite scene in this trailer too.
I concur.
End. Yeah. The sunset. It's all quiet. No one's talking. This scenes like this makes me feel like, okay, like, the original game, it was silly when it needed to be silly, and it was serious when it needed to be serious. This is a very quiet and somber moment, and this is it just gave me chills the first time I saw it. Like, wow, this is going to have some good moments in this remake. And
I'm actually surprised they showed this scene because it already feels powerful right off the bat.
Yeah, without any other, obviously we know what happened, but it's just... I like just how energetic this trailer is, and then it just ends with it just being quiet and just no one talking and just a moment of silence while you just take in what happened. And oh man, we got the sunset, coming up over the top. It's just
I also like that Cloud is he's turning around and heading back to them, so it implies that I think they're going up to the Shinra Tower at this point.
Yeah,
and he just kept going and then heard that they weren't following him anymore. And then he just turns around and nobody's saying anything, and he just sees that they're standing there looking, so then he comes back and walks over to them.
See, this is really going to drive home that Shinra is really, really, really evil, right? It's not just there's this idea, okay, we're blowing up reactors. That's pretty terrible. They kind of reference this in an earlier trailer. Tifa's like, is this the right thing to do? Maybe we're the evil ones. But then when you see this moment where like Cloud's like just looking out over the fact that they just like killed how many possibly millions of people, and you just
to kill 5 people.
Yeah, it's just gut wrenching. Yeah, but honestly, great way to end this trailer. So
yeah, that was the best scene. I agree.
Yeah, that does tell me that they're capable of hitting some powerful moments, even with stuff that we know is coming.
This person was just pointing out that they didn't want Genesis in the 7 remake. So as long as Genesis was not included in the 7 remake, they would be okay.
He's not everyone.
I can tell you one reason why.
Okay.
The rights, right?
The rights to Gact again.
Well, they could call a character Genesis and not, and make it different enough to where like it's not. There's no legal problems.
Well, that goes to my second reason then.
Okay.
Just don't.
I think number 2 is really the best.
Terribly written character, terribly shoehorned in. Like, he's the reason that Sephiroth went crazy. Not from Sephiroth's own logic and, conclusions. It's, Genesis pulled a fast one on him. I take that canon completely out of my head.
And I know typically in the past they would have, your core Final Fantasy, players like Sakaguchi and, Katase and, your other big players that would kind of come together and kind of bang out the premise of the game, like the characters of the game and the general plot and like, the flow of things. But, Jima was the one that would actually come along and like make it a story, right? Mm-hmm. So at least with when did he come along? Did he come along with Final Fantasy VII first? I'm trying to remember. But anyways, I know he was involved with 7 and 10 as well. So definitely very iconic in his own
history with Nojima. He was a scenario writer for the original 7, Final Fantasy VIII, 10, Kingdom Hearts, 10-2, Before Crisis, Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, Advent Children, Last Order, Final Fantasy VII, Dirge of Cerberus, Final Fantasy VII, Crisis Core.
So he's a mixed bag.
He's been involved in basically all the 7 material, good and bad.
It says it was an exciting task to introduce a new current of wind of Final Fantasy VII, but at the same time there was some fear. The original game used cartoon-like stylized art, and the story was completed by players using their imagination to supplement portions that couldn't be depicted as a result. Even if they were seeing the same scene, the information they took away from it and how they interpreted it differed depending on the viewer. Perhaps at what might be considered a narrative form of storytelling nowadays. In the Final Fantasy VII Remake, there will be much less room for player imagination. This fact will probably change the feel of the story considerably. People who know the original might not know quite how to take it. Such is the fear that I have. Stan, I know you picked this particular segment from what he wrote, but I thought it was a very good pick because it shows that he's put a lot of thought into this, and I think that some of his, concerns are fairly realistic, right? The fact that he points out that, hey, the old game did leave a lot up to the imagination, and, the fact that this is much more realistic, he's worried about, trying to meet everyone's expectations, because who knows what everyone thought, about Cloud. Like he points out, like that he had to put a lot of thought into this, into Cloud's past, and like even things like how he reacts to NPCs walking by. Like, does he walk close to them? How close does he talk to them when he's talking to them? What kind of facial expressions does he have? Like things like that like, are now more of a consideration that was a lot more in your imagination back when you were playing the game on the PlayStation. So very interesting that he was putting this much thought into it.
Yeah, when he's saying there will be less room for player imagination, I think what he's meaning is like it's almost kind of like going from like a comic book, right? to a comic book movie, or you could say, right? Like if we use the analogy and say the original 7 is a comic, because it's all written text that you have to read, right?
Sure.
And the characters are kind of representations, like, you know, the little Lego people jumping around or whatever. Like, you can't really like read facial expressions and they're not voiced, right? So he now has to write the dialogue for you know, somebody to say it, right? Like in a particular way, and he has to be aware of kind of like what cinematography they're going to use, like what position the character is going to be in, like when they speak.
Mm-hmm.
Which those older FF games are more, you could write them as if they're like a stage play, right? Like the characters are all here, they're standing over here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you just write it, and you just have the text, right? And you may have them, you know, kind of emote, like in FF7 they had like very big like gestures that they had to do in order to emote, right?
Right.
But now that's all going to be like taken care of by the voice acting and like the facial features, right? Like the expressions that they make, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that, I think that's what he means by less room for imagination.
It comes with the territory for sure when you upscale it to this, you know, a whole reimagining. Because the difference between like 2D games and 3D games, like we already talked about, like with Dragon Quest XI in particular, is that it's much harder to pull off and express things that cinematography and 3D modern games can do without having to go too much out of its way to convey with you. And with 2D, you have to like make these specific sprite animations. And even to the extent with Final Fantasy VII also with its polygon models, that like you can't like express Cloud in the exact way you want to. So you have to compromise with something and make him do something that gives you the general idea of how he's feeling or what he's doing. Like when he wants to be cool, he takes his like whole big blocky hand and swipes his hair like that.
Yeah.
Quick animation like that. It's like, that's, you know, he's trying to play it cool and stuff. Like, he doesn't need to do that necessarily in the remake. He can just make like a grin on his face or do like a full like motion thing to make it, to convey that instead. So it's really just like an apple and oranges type of deal. Like, sure, maybe it's technically less imaginative, but you are getting the message, the developer intent straight to you at the same time. So it's really comparing two different things.
What were your general thoughts with this remake trailer at the Game Awards?
Well, if there's anyone who knows how to make a good trailer, it certainly is Square Enix, because they really know how to hype you up for a new game. What comes of that game can vary with this company, of course, but I am pretty excited to play this remake. Every time they bring a new trailer out, they get the Nobuo Uematsu music out. It sounds all epic and ready to go. I'm really interested to see how they expand upon Midgard, and I like these little tidbits of information they've been giving us. I don't really have any particular problem with anything much in the trailer, so I'd say it was a really good one overall.
When this thing came up, it was definitely a highlight, and I was a little critical of the past trailer for certain scenes, but this specific trailer, man, it really got me pumped for the game. If I had to be nitpicky, there's little things in there that kind of like, I didn't really like, but all in all, I thought this was a fantastic trailer from the way it was presented and the direction. I just thought it was really, really good. Stan, what did you think?
Yeah, I thought it was a good, pretty good trailer. Yeah, the thing that jumped out the most to me was the dialogue. Not necessarily the voice acting as much, but definitely the dialogue felt more natural, especially since compared to what they presented in the previous trailers.
Yeah.
In the previous trailers, we got like a lot of kind of snappy one-liners, I guess you could say, or like battle shouting, you know, things you kind of anime lines as you like try to strike somebody, you know.
Marvel's Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah. But in this one, we actually had the opportunity to hear like more banter between the characters, like between Cloud and Barrett and Cloud and Tifa towards the end, and it felt much more natural to me, anyway.
Lane, did you have any thoughts on the trailer? Did you like it or not like it?
Yeah, I liked it. It's didn't seem like there was a whole lot of new stuff. Nothing that we hadn't really areas and scenes we hadn't seen before. But I definitely was stoked to hear the bombing mission track reorchestrated. That was cool. Really got me hyped for the game.
Yeah.
One thing, I don't know, something about Barrett's voice acting really kind of puts me off a little bit. It just seems a little overly dramatic and over the top, but that's just kind of a little nitpick, I guess.
Right.
But it certainly does not detract from my hype from this game.
We were kind of messaging back and forth about the game on the Game Awards, and I think one of the things we all said after we got done watching this trailer was that aside from no new announcements really, the dialogue in particular was much better. The fact that it was very focused, they were very intent on showing the dramatic weight, I guess you could say, of the things that they're doing at this part in the game, where they're blowing up facilities, potentially killing people. And, it just with, Big saying like, no one would do this for money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like your heart has to be in this, because what kind of person would be doing this just for money? Right. So even though there's a bunch of memes popping up about that, like no one would do this for money. And it's like Square Enix doing the Final Fantasy VII Remake.
For money, yeah.
Which is hilarious, but this trailer was so focused on its tone, and I thought there's very little in here for me to really complain about on the dialogue front. Anyways, I was kind of thinking that they really do have to kind of play their cards right with this, because when this game came out in 1997, I remember playing it, and my idea of a terrorist was like a villain in a Die Hard movie or something, right? There was this fictional thing that wasn't really something that was in my everyday life, but since then we've had 9/11 and we've had the whole terrorism thing for the last 20 years. And now it's a very real thing as much as it is around the world. So, they have to be careful here and play this right, or else it's going to come across really badly, I think.
That is a good point. In the original Final Fantasy VII, it's touched upon kind of later in the game when Kate Sith is calling Barrett out on his actions, but I do wonder if in this game they'll touch even heavier on these acts and really question, maybe by Jesse and Biggs and Wedge, and see their perspective, since we're expanding on them. Maybe we'll see the gray area more. Because in beginning FF7, it's you think what you're doing is a good thing, but then when you get much later into the game, you do question what you are doing. Not to the point that you think you're an eco-terrorist, but you start seeing the morality of your actions, and I wonder if they'll take it a step further in this remake. Yeah. Especially like you said, the current climate.
Yeah, it definitely seems like it. We saw in the prior trailer with Tifa saying, not like this, I don't want to do this, not like this. And I think especially in this trailer, they're definitely, pushing out a very hard here that, your heart's either in it or it's not, but we can't, this is definitely something to take seriously. You see this scene with Cloud pushing away Aerith, and he's saying, stay away from me. I'm involved in something that's extremely dangerous, right? Just, what they're doing is not something you probably should be involved in. This is something that I saw Lore Runner bring up when he was kind of analyzing the Tokyo Game Show trailer with Reno, when Reno's zapping around like lightning, and he's like, dude, Reno could not do this in the original game. Where did he get this ability? And then he kind of was like, well, he is part of Shinra. Shinra provides soldier materia. They've already established this in lore. It wouldn't be unreasonable that they would also give the Turks, enhancements as well to help them do their job. So
you could trap them in pyramids also, this little barrier pyramids and stuff. So,
Oh, they should do it. I want to see the house with the rockets and the legs, and then I want to see Reno put people in pyramids. Anyway.
I almost guarantee that'll be in the game. He'll throw a barrier around someone, and then you'll have to be you have to switch between one of the other three characters and get them out before Reno puts another person in a barrier, and then it's game over. Like if he traps all three of you.
Dude, I'm in. Yeah. I'm totally in. Seen at about 14 seconds with Aerith putting this flower in Cloud's, armor or whatever, and she says something like "sorry," like her mouth stops moving when "sorry" finishes. Like, thank you, like that. Yeah. Like that was so annoying, and 15 that would just their lips would still be flapping sometimes after the word stopped and stuff. Like they fixed that, and you see it again with Cloud. He stops talking, the lips stop moving. That I'm sorry, nothing takes me out of the game more so than when a game that's released this era does not have that. It's stupid. It's silly.
Right. Yeah, I think we might be seeing sort of the perks of them deciding to go with Unreal Engine 4 versus trying to, recreate the wheel with their own engine.
Again, for the third time.
Right, yeah. So I'm glad they kind of went with what we know works and what, does it well. So
yeah.
You want to move down to our new favorite character? Please talk about Roche Dirt.
Roche.
AKA Joe Dirt or Roche Dirt. Yes. I hope, given the fact that, from what we've seen, the 4 seconds of this guy that we've seen, I thought was super cringy. And then also, if you read the description for this guy, it says he loves bikes, speed, and anyone who can give him a challenge. His comrades, however, find him annoying, and he constantly squeals his rear tire and makes them choke on fumes or of burnt rubber. Like, this guy is a train wreck. So
he might be in this game for comedic.
Maybe.
He might be. Like, how Gilgamesh is in 5 and Ultros is in 6.
Right.
Like, this could be like FF7's comedic character.
Maybe.
He gets in the way of the party, but he's not the one that's going to cause any major issue.
Dude, if this guy, I'm sorry. Well, maybe if I play the game and he has comedic effect and I laugh hysterically every time he's on the screen, because they've done that before in other Final Fantasy games. It was great. I'll buy it and I'll be like, okay, I'll eat my words and say, okay, good, that was well done. But if he's not like that and it's just terrible, if they make this guy reappear throughout the entire game like Seymour in Final Fantasy X, to where this guy's appearing at the crater at the end of the game, I'll get you this time, and he's squealing his back tire still. I'll be like, Square, what were you thinking? Just to give you guys a quick rundown of what's happened. Again, this is not going to be a spoiler. We're not going to be releasing anything that's not already available, and officially that is. Basically, right around Christmas time, there was some images going around on Twitter of certain people who were able to get a download of the Final Fantasy VII Remake demo, but they weren't actually able to play it. And then somewhere between Christmas and New Year's, people were able to hack into it or get it to play, and people started uploading the entire demo of the Final Fantasy VII Remake that they found, right? And then also they were able to hack into the game and pull out character models for characters later in the game and showing those unoptimized renders, right? So these aren't, the characters in their context. They don't have the lighting on them or anything like that, or any of the dirt or anything. It's just the base model. And people were actually posting a synopsis of the entire script that they were able to find on the game. People were able to post the soundtrack. And in response to all this, Square Enix came down hard and started getting people removed, banned, and just getting all this stuff removed off the internet. And this has kind of created a controversy among fans regarding the fact that this was leaked. Is it okay to talk about leaked games? Is Is it okay to talk about this demo? What do you guys think? Do you think these leaks have been harmful, or do you think it's going to help the game?
I don't think it's going to be harmful at all, ultimately, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I think anyone who is planning on buying this remake is still going to buy that remake. Everyone has been waiting for it. The reason leaks like this happen to begin with are because people are so impatient, wanting this game so badly. So I don't think that'll affect sales. And really, the mass majority of buyers are still not people who are completely aware that these leaks exist or anything. In terms of if it's okay to spoil or anything, I still say no, just because even though we're going pretty much across familiar territory, like we know what's going to happen, there are still people who are excited to see how the content may be reinterpreted.
Right.
So they don't want to be spoiled on how this vision of the game.
I mean, I think there's a fine line. I mean, if somebody got a hold of a copy of the demo and they played the demo and they're going to talk about their impressions with the gameplay and, stuff like that, I think that's one thing. But, if you're posting like a bullet point analysis of the entire plot of the first game, and there's people like me that are like really devout fans of the original game, and I'm looking at this bullet point list and I'm like, this plot's freaking stupid. I mean, that I could see where Square Enix might think like, well, okay, you need to play this game in context because you're reading bullet points, and it would make more sense. It would be more touching. You might actually like it if you experienced it. And I could see Square taking action on those people. But if you got a copy of the demo, like Eric was saying, it's the bombing mission. I mean, it's going to be a little different, but we already have lots of videos of people talking about the E3 demo. I mean, I think those are apples and oranges to me. But Stan, what do you think?
It's kind of a nuanced situation, I guess, because with this particular game, like you already mentioned, 95% or probably at least 90% is going to be the same story as the one we played, 20 plus years ago. Right. So because with the biggest thing with leaks, I would say, is like a spoiler, right? Nobody wants to get spoiled for like a new Star Wars movie coming out or whatever, So it's kind of the same thing here, but in this case, it's a remake of an old story that we've played. So, like, for this game in particular, I don't think the leaks are that harmful. It's mostly, like you said, just people who are very curious, right, to know what all is different in the game and versus what they played many years ago.
Right.
I don't think it's going to hurt the sales of the game. I don't think it's going to hurt the hype for the game at all. From what I've heard, nobody has uncovered anything that they think oh, this is dumb, or I'm not buying the game now because I found this in the code or whatever. No, pretty much everybody is still hyped for the game.
All agree on definitely is that they screwed up big time, letting the whole pretty much the entire script of the game and the soundtrack be in the demo. That was a big no-no.
Eric's point, that it was baffling how much information was on there, because people were able to pull out how many chapters the whole game is going to be, and now people are speculating about how long the game's going to be. Apparently people were able to pull out Cloud and Address, for example, and stuff like that. So I mean, if that stuff's not in the demo, I don't know why why that was on there, but maybe somebody that is more familiar with that process can enlighten us in the comments. But that is very strange, the leak that you want to kind of address before we move on.
I'll just reiterate again, just be respectful to people who do want to be as surprised as much as they can be with this game. So don't go in,
Be respectful. But if you are one of those people that wants to go in completely blind, do not just click on stuff that you shouldn't click on and then complain, right? I saw so many comments. The guy, the YouTuber Spawnwave, he did a video. It said Final Fantasy VII Remake leaks, right? And then I clicked on it, and then I went down the comments, and people were like, "You spoiled it for me." And I'm like, why would you click on this if you're that concerned about it? But yeah, I mean, don't just openly be talking about it in the general chat in a Discord server or something like that. That's disrespectful. So we've been kind of joking around a little bit for like the last year or 8 months. Basically, ever since we've gotten a release date for Final Fantasy VII Remake, that, until this game's delayed, because almost every Final Fantasy / Kingdom Hearts property by Square Enix ends up getting delayed to some extent. So in this case, it's not so bad. We have April 10th, 2020, as opposed to March 3rd. So I know that some people are kind of bummed out about that, but they basically said that, hey, we want to polish this game up, make sure that we can deliver the best possible product. And there's actually a statement from Katase, who's producing the game, by the way. He's the original director of Final Fantasy VII. He says, we know that so many of you are looking forward to the release of Final Fantasy VII Remake and have been waiting patiently to experience what we have been working on. In order to ensure we deliver a game that is in line with our vision and the quality that our fans who have been waiting for deserve, we have decided to move the release date to April 10th, 2020. We are making this tough decision in order to give ourselves a few extra weeks to apply final polish to the game and to deliver to you with the best possible experience. I, on behalf of the whole team, want to apologize to everyone, as I know this means waiting for the game just a little bit longer. Thank you for your patience and continued support. As you will notice, he did not say, and please be excited, which I'm disappointed because that's like a Square Enix quote at this point. But I mean, it's a month though. I will say that like this rollout of the release date and then their announcement that it's been moved back a little bit has been handled so much better than Final Fantasy 15. If you remember, Square held this huge like uncovered Final Fantasy 15 event, and at the end of the whole thing, they had these two guys like bickering over like pressing this red button, like, oh, I'm gonna press it, don't let him press it, right? And like if he presses the button, it'll show the release date, and it was totally cringy. And like at the end of the show, he presses it, like fireworks are going off and stuff, and it shows like, I can't remember the date now, it was like September 30th. Then like 2 weeks later, like Tabata's sitting there in like front of a camera, like, sorry to disappoint you, but it's coming out in November. Like, I was like, you guys didn't know that back when that presentation was going on? You had no idea, So I do think they've handled this rollout a little bit better, where, they just put a release date out there. This is what we're going for. But then they let us know here well in advance, and it's a month. It's not that big of a deal. Quickly after Square announced that the 7 Remake was going to be delayed till April 10th, we then heard from CD Projekt Red, who said that Cyberpunk 2077 is going to be delayed until September 17th.
Yeah, a 6-month delay.
Yeah, like I was kind of seeing online that a lot of people were complaining about the 7 Remake, like they were just furious about this month delay. And then, but like the Cyberpunk delay, like the fan base was just like, oh, good, take as much time as you need. And it's like, that's like 6 times as long. Like,
right.
But I don't know. You kind of had an interesting point regarding this with, the timing.
Yeah, it just makes me wonder if, because this delay got announced 2 days after FF7 Remake got delayed. And so I was wondering, did Square Enix know like ahead of time, or did they determine that they need to delay their game and they're trying to pick a date, and then they did they have CD Projekt Red's phone number and just call them up and say, hey, are you still committed to that date on the 16th,
right,
or something? And then they told them like, oh, we're gonna push it back soon, and then they were like, okay, cool, we'll take the 10th. I wonder, because it was really puzzling like the first couple days when FF7 moved to the 10th and Cyberpunk was going to come out on the 16th, because that situation seemed like a very bad situation for RPG fans, right, to have to choose.
I do admit, when I first saw that 7 Remake was coming out on April 10th, I was like, oh, that's going to suck, because that's totally cutting into my Cyberpunk time. And if I had to choose, every day, Final Fantasy VII Remake for me personally. I will buy that and play that over Cyberpunk, even though like I'm really looking forward to Cyberpunk. It's just, dude, like I've been looking forward to this game for Final Fantasy VII Remake for such a long time. So there's a lot of reveals in the trailer that is not necessarily, if you're looking forward to those reveals and being surprised, this trailer is going to kind of break some of that surprise.
Yeah, you may want to not look at this trailer, because this is definitely the most stuff that they've shown in this trailer. Like, right. And it really feels like, based on what was leaked in early January, that a lot of the content that came out in those leaks, like the leaked screenshots, they put them in this trailer.
That assessment, because I have a hard time believing that Square would show this much material. You know, usually they're a little bit more reserved, at least with, you know, the initial release. Some of their, you know, remasters, they'll get a little spoilery with their trailers, but they're usually pretty good. But I do think that they thought maybe we want to combat some of that criticism or some of the negativity they're seeing with some of the leaks, because those leaks, like we talked about before, were really out of context. You know, they like, it just wasn't being shown in the best light. And I think they just were like, you know what? Like, okay, this is what we got. This is what this game is. This is kind of like not the full context because you're not playing the game, but it is the trailer, you know, a trailer where they get to choose and pick how they want things to be presented. Anything else you guys wanted to kind of touch on before we jump into the trailer?
Now let's bash the hell out of this trailer. I mean, give our full and loving support to Square Enix by going over this bit by bit.
Yeah. We are going to review beta footage.
Send us a review copy.
We have a shot of Genova. So this is one of those things that, at least this part right here, may not be a change, but then we have Cloud having one of his infamous headaches that no one seems to address in any serious manner. And suddenly you see Sephiroth before Genova. And initially I thought, okay, like this is more of one of the things they added where Cloud seems to be having a hallucination. He sees Sephiroth instead of just, you know, we have to, in the original game, we had to kind of imagine what he was seeing in his head. But then after that, it looks like Aerith and Tifa also see Sephiroth there.
Yep.
So clearly this is a pretty big change that we're actually seeing Sephiroth in the flesh here before Genova. So
yeah, it seems pretty clear that the other characters can see him also.
Yeah,
which would imply it's not a hallucination.
Story level, it could make sense to see Sephiroth right now. I still think on a thematic level, it's still very inappropriate to show him this way first. Like you're like that build up towards him in the original FF7 is just like a near perfect way to like show how terrifying a villain can be in this type of game. And I think it's going to ruin that just from the start, just by like just letting him be out in the open like this.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, the game does this routinely where and this is one of the best things about Final Fantasy VII. The Midgard sequence was like that was the first time they employed that type of storytelling, because if you think about it, the first couple hours, like they're just building Shinra up, and like it seems like no matter what you do, Shinra wins, right? I mean, you blow up a reactor and then you try to like, you know, regroup and go to your second one, and Shinra's already on it. Your fake IDs don't work, you know, and then like you can't protect Aerith. They grab her. That you can't prevent the plate from dropping. Like you climb the tower, the Shinra tower, and you go through all these obstacles, and you finally get to the top, and like you're like, all right, we're gonna rescue Aerith. No, like Shinra knew you were there. Get out of here. Like,
get
and
captured,
you get locked in prison. Like no matter what, you lose. And then in the middle of the night, you wake up, and like the whole like you just walk out, and there's just a sword in the President Shinra's chest, and you're like, Jesus Christ, this person I've been trying to like deal with for like the whole game now is just dead. And like it's just like this moment where like it's this subversion of, oh, you thought that was the villain? No, this is the villain, right? So, and that's like one of those first times where they really use gameplay, where you like to showcase the type of story that they're trying to tell here and to really build that character up. So clearly that was awesome. This, we don't know how they're going to do it. They could do something similar. Maybe they do that earlier, where they kind of had that build up a little bit earlier. But I think the thing that rubs me the wrong way about this sometimes when I think about it is it doesn't feel to me like an artistic decision as much as it makes me feel like it was more of a marketing thing where, okay, it's part 1, it's in Midgard. Like Sephiroth's iconic.
Yeah.
We have to have Sephiroth in there. That seems to me like they just worked him in there because they felt like he needed to be in the first game.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like that's pretty much it. Like it's he had to be in the game at this point because who knows when the next part is coming out, and then are you going to have people buy the first game, not see Sephiroth at all in it, right? Or maybe just brief glimpses of him, and then be like, buy part 2, you know, to actually fight the villain of the story. People are going to feel, you know, original fans may understand because they'll say like, well, that's true to the original story. That's how it goes.
Sure.
But then a lot of people who are probably going to buy this game who didn't buy the original, or maybe only watched like a Let's Play of the original, and this is going to be their first experience of the story, it's going to feel anticlimactic, right? That if you don't even have a showdown with Sephiroth physically in some way.
Done it, but I think we're like definitely on point here with saying that like it's way too marketable, and a lot of people know Sephiroth that have never even played the game, and so they just probably felt like, okay, it has to be in there. But it's kind of like a problem of their own making because the game doesn't have to be only in Midgard.
Yeah.
So,
that's
but
true.
We're like, I don't know. It's kind of like beating a dead horse though, because Square Enix is not going to change the format of the first game. It's coming out in April. So I kind of just have to like, okay, it's in Midgard. There's certain realities we just can't get around. Like that's the corporate element of this game that's like seeping through, that the fact that, you know, that they feel like they need to rewrite that to make it more marketable. And, you know, it's either going to be good in the way they do it, or it's not. A general unveiling of the wall market with Cloud walking down the road in the dress, and, you know, Aerith saying you're so pretty, which I love that dialogue because I like that about 15, where it kind of increased your immersion with the characters talking. So I'm glad that they're going to have that in this game as well. But you can kind of see that this wall market is maintaining its very Japanese niche with like Japanese words and lanterns, and like the whole architecture is remaining that style, which I kind of dig because when I was a kid, it made me feel like I was in a different place, you know. It's kind of a small touch, but I'm glad they didn't try to like Americanize it or Westernize it, you know, and make it just like a stereotypical Western grungy city. This is, you know, they maintained the way it looks.
Just an observation. This is kind of a fault of the original game too, but like Cloud, they didn't do a very good job of making Cloud look like a woman. Like, all right, so first off, even if Cloud can pass as a woman here, he is wearing a dress that looks like it's from the 18th century when Tifa and
he's a very conservative gal.
Yeah, I mean, ooh, look at those ankles. But yeah, anyways, like Tifa and Aerith look like they blend in with the place. It's like a I don't even know what to compare it to, like a Las Vegas like place.
Right.
Yes.
You know, they look dressed for the occasion. They look like they're going out clubbing or whatnot. And Cloud looks like he's ready to serve drinks at a saloon. Look how big and expansive the wall market looks now compared to the original. Like, I actually think it looks really good. Like, seeing Don Corneo's mansion from a distance.
Yeah,
like wall marketplaces around it. I mean, it's really nice looking. I'll definitely give credit for that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I really like the way it looks. You have all these tourists, you have different shops and like different like little food carts and stuff on the side of the road, and, you know, little chairs, but also you see like, you know, weeds and stuff growing out from the ground.
Yeah.
I like
nice contrast, right?
Yeah.
Like you have places like Honeybee Inn and then the mansion in the background, which are like these, big wealthy buildings. But then everybody else is kind of just set up shop where there was room, on the side of the road.
Yeah.
So, is Don Corneo exactly what you guys thought he'd be?
He's great.
Yeah. Big sleazeball.
Yeah. I love the shirt that white shirt that he wears. If you look at 126, 127, like you look at the buttons, they look like they're about to pop off.
Yeah.
like he clearly bought this shirt when he was a less rich man, and then it's his favorite shirt. He keeps wearing it, but it doesn't fit.
It kind of got that 70s look to it.
Yeah, it does. It does. Of Joe Dirt.
Joe Dirt,
otherwise known as Roche.
That's our loving name for him. Yeah. Soldier Joe Dirt.
Soldier Joe Dirt, third class.
He's exactly who I thought. Like you know what kind of character he is now because of this. Like he's going to be that like reoccurring joke villain type character, like one you don't take too seriously. And he's just going to come out of nowhere and just like interrupt you for a while. You fight him, he goes away, kind of like a Gilgamesh type of deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he almost runs over his the Shinra guards. He's like recklessly driving his motorcycle around, almost hits some of them.
Well, if you remember in a prior episode, we read some of the descriptions for the characters that Square Enix themselves provided. And for Roche, they said that he was, I think, a soldier first class, but they also said that his companions or his comrades find him annoying because he feels the need to do donuts with his motorcycle and put the fumes in their face, which we thought that was a horrible portrayal of a character because it seems like a train wreck. But I gotta be honest.
What he did.
Yeah, he did do that exactly in this trailer. he did donuts, and then like right in his like soldier buddy's faces, like he's just like blowing fumes in their face. But my expectations for this character were really, really, really just god awful low, about as low as you could get it. Like I was just like, once I saw this character, I thought for sure, like this was like one of the first cracks of this game, like one of the moments, like I just knew. But with this scene, it's not quite as bad as I had thought. And I think it comes down to the voice acting I actually kind of like for the character. And then also he's still dumb, but some of the dialogue he says, like he says, I see you're still stirring up the hornet's nest. I just want one last dance. Like, I mean, it's kind of cheesy, but like, at least it's not like, cliche evil guy laugh, like a Dragon Ball Z character or something like, like at least they tried to do a little bit here. So it seems a little bit better than initially what I thought. So Square just released the opening to the game, Final Fantasy VII. It's actually somewhat faithful, and then it's actually taken some different turns as well. They've actually changed a lot of things. So we're interested in getting into it here. We're starting off here with the first 30 seconds or so with, it looks like a bird is flying outside of Midgard. I actually think this is kind of cool because this kind of reminds me of the secret ending that Final Fantasy VII has. It's not really a spoiler, I don't think, but Red 13 or someone who looks like Red 13, right, runs up and like on this area, and it's all like, it's not a desert anymore, it's all grassy and everything, and it's kind of like a stark contrast to that. So I think that's cool.
The opening shot kind of like really shows like this cliff, like kind of a cliffside, like in the first, 15 seconds or so. And so I've seen people speculate like, oh, maybe that's the cliff where, like you said, the secret ending, like Red 13 kind of comes up to the top, and then you get like the view of the city.
Yeah.
I guess maybe they wanted to go full circle by the end of the story.
Yeah, they could show this exact same shot, but everything is green or something.
Yeah. I think it's a good way to start off the game. Initially, when I saw they were changing a little bit, I'm not gonna lie, I had the like knee-jerk reaction of thinking this isn't necessary. but once I realized what they were doing, I kind of liked it.
On the other hand, though, like when you get to like the city part, it's not like perfect by any means, but like you never really got a clear idea of what the upper sector really looked like. Yeah. And this is like, it's kind of nice to see. It's kind of what I was expecting, but it's still nice to see regardless. I think like 95% of the time we've mostly seen just the lower plates. Yeah. Where it's always dark underneath and stuff like that. And above it just looks like kind of a normal city.
Yeah, I this was kind of one of the things I took note of too, was that being able to see the upper plate like this and seeing what life is like up here. Clearly it's still kind of dirty, but it's also, things are taken care of. Like you can see all these different areas where like at 108, you see guys working on stuff. I mean, later, and I think a few seconds later, you see workers,
children riding bikes in the street.
Yeah, but you see like workers repairing like lines and stuff. Like at 114, you see construction workers. They're repairing stuff. I mean, clearly like money's going here to take care of the upper plate. They're actually, for better or worse, this part of the city's actually being maintained.
Something I'm going to compliment also is that it gives a good idea of how well Shinra actually takes care of the people, or how it looks like they take good care of the people, because everyone looks pretty normal going about every day. Doesn't seem like there's much oppression going on in the upper plate. It's probably not perfect, but they very likely highly depend on Shinra Electric Company, like we depend on these type of these, and they don't really perceive them as evil. They don't even think about like if taking Mako energy is a good or bad thing. Like these are things that are people from the lower plate are expressing more than people on top. People are just living their lives.
Also like the music that they play for this intro sequence is like in contrast with kind of what you see visually, right? Because like you said, it's mostly people just going about their business, right? Or the kids like having a good time riding around. But then there's like this ominous tone with these like one-winged angel chord, like repeating in the background. And so it's kind of like telling you two things at once. Like there's also like around 111, there's like a shot of like a stray dog like trying to eat out of a trash can. Right? Yeah. But like meanwhile the kids just kind of like ride by in the background, no one cares. And then there's a very deliberate shot of like a fading flower, and the grass around it is all brown. The flower is dead, and a car just goes by, like traffic is just going by as usual, So it's like really trying to hammer home the point that like people are not concerned with the environment or the pollution, right? But at the same time, they're very happy how they are. They've like completely lost sight of that as an issue.
The gray area that the Avalanche comes in, because they don't really explore that too much till near the end of the game, where Kate Sith kind of calls Barrett out on it, on destroying all the reactors, and doing like more showing how life is for everyone with these Mako reactors and what happens when they do blow up and who they affect. Like that does help send a stronger message of like the gray area that is like, sure, you're saving the planet destroying these Mako reactors, but you're also taking away the livelihood of innocent people, and you're going to put them either in poverty or put them in a dangerous state, and you're killing people not just from the explosion, but it's like you take away electricity and internet from us. It's like these are things that we depend on now as people, and we don't, like, who knows what we would do if we had like all this stuff taken away from us.
You can see inside this like diner area, and it's all nicely lit, and it's got like wood tables, and it's kind of like a coffee shop almost. But in the original, this was a very dark area with just like a neon sign that said like Goblin's Bar. And so they've kind of lit this area up a little bit and cleaned it up a little bit and gave it a little bit more lighting. And then on the left-hand side, there was like a place that was called, I think, Confessions or something like that. And they just got rid of that, and now it's just, they moved the Loveless sign down. So they've kind of changed this area, but obviously they've changed this as well. She bumps into somebody and goes down to pick the flower up before she just kind of walked out to the street, and that was it. But
yeah, now like you said, somebody bumps into her and she drops her flowers, and kind of like how we saw in the first half of this trailer, like the people kind of pay it no mind, right? They don't care. Nobody stops to help her pick up the flowers or anything.
They just step on the flower. Yeah. We go to, I'm almost there, 333. If you look on the left-hand side at 333, I mean, it was kind of like in the original, it was kind of like there was stuff covering this, like smoke and stuff, so you couldn't really see. But this is like, I guess I never noticed that there was such a huge chunk of like the sector that just isn't covered. And I wonder if a lot of the sunlight that does leak through is from sections like this, you know?
Is that Sector 6 that's like on the west, that's all
yes
up looking?
Yeah. Sector 6 in the original game is incomplete. They're still building it. So, like Hat said, in the original opening, when they pan out, like when they do this classic opening, there's like a bunch of smoke kind of really billowing up in that part, and then the logo comes in, and it's really big. It covers a big chunk of the screen. So you can't really see it very well. Like you can kind of see it, that it's just kind of gray. Right. But then when you go into the Shinra building, there's a little mini game you have to play on one of the floors where you have to get parts, and then there's like a model of the city, like in a room.
Oh yeah, and it's like it's broken. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and then Sector 6 is the only one you don't have to put the parts in because
it says
specifically like still under construction. When it's complete, like the Midgard city planning initiative or whatever will be fulfilled.
That's right. I totally forgot about that. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, so it hasn't been completed. That's faithful. You just couldn't see the kind of detail they're showing it in here before.
At like 336, can we just talk about how big like this tower is compared? Yeah. It's like almost the size of like an entire sector.
The very top of that is like where the president is, right?
I believe so.
It looks way higher than the 70 floors or whatever it was said, right?
This is like literally like an eighth of the city. Like, it's so big. And then look at these lights, dude. These lights, the 3 lights that are at the bottom. One of those lights is probably like an entire neighborhood size. Like, can you imagine how hot it must get? I mean,
just imagine when they installed the Mako cannon on there.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah.
That whole thing falling on your plate.
Well, and
I hope nobody has like an apartment next to those lights, right?
Yeah, you're just like, Jesus Christ!
You never get any sleep.
Someone buys this new house, and he's like, "Oh, I got this in the best area, nice neighborhood." And they put a Mako laser over it the next day, and you just complete shade over your new home.
119 degrees all year.
Like, well, someone's signing up to Avalanche.
Well, dude, not to mention that if you go further in at like 338, 339, like imagine like this house over here in the left-hand corner, kind of midway lower area. That's like right next to this reactor that's just blowing crap out. Like, you can't tell me that's good for you. Like, that's got to be like the worst place in the entire city to have a house. I would rather live under the. Honestly, if you live under the plate, it's probably better for you. Maybe in some ways, because you're just not getting this crap rained down on you.
Yeah, maybe.
Anyways, we've really read into this.
I think they met a fair compromise of still making him look big and intimidating while not looking too over the top in the context of
the game,
the realism they're trying to present.
So I agree, but look at how many belts this guy has around his stomach.
Look, man, he's a Tetsuya Nomura character. He's going to have belts, okay?
Yeah, but how does he clip all those? He's only got one arm.
Like I don't know, like I want to actually look at this. I want to see if there is like any intent or like there's actually some form of logic to these things.
Especially these clip ones, dude. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a row. Like this guy just mastered it. Then he's got another one for his arm. Like, I mean, he's really. Anyways, let's move on from this.
It's fascinating stuff. I tell you.
Barrett belt buckle analysis only here.
Well, they've cut down. At least it's not like an entire outfit like Lulu, right?
He's pretty close.
He's close, but there is some fabric here, you know.
Somewhere in Square Enix headquarters, Nomura was like, "I want 12 belts on Barrett," and Kitase had to talk him down to 6. Right?
Yeah.
Like, Mora, what? 8 is enough. Down this article, I've got to talk about how stupid these summons look. I got to do it.
Cactar looks good. Right? One out of 3 ain't bad.
Before you say how stupid it is, we've been getting pretty negative. If there's anything you like about the summon, say that first.
It reminds me that I want to watch Dragon Ball Z again. Nomura could not help himself. He Nomura'd the Chocobo chick. He's got freaking spiky, pretty hair and like handsome looking eyes. And this is a tiny little Chocobo chick. And like even in the screenshots, he lights up like a Super Saiyan.
It's like Big Bird almost, but as a little kid.
But funny enough, this isn't the worst looking summon I've seen from these pictures. This is the dumbest incarnation of Carbuncle I have ever seen.
He's got a big jewel on his forehead.
It's got a big Megamind freaking brain skull with the ruby there. And I checked the original FF7 to see if this is just like a faithful creation of it.
No.
It is not. Nowhere here. Like this is like if Eevee and Megamind fused together.
It uses this gem to bestow a variety of powers on its allies. So
It could do that without the freakish forehead.
Now at least we have
Maybe,
the Cactar. That's kind of cool.
Maybe the Carbuncle is Carbuncle after Hojo's experiments on it, right?
Maybe this is Chadley. after he's done with his internship.
It makes you more surprised they didn't do much with the Cactar. I'm like, hey, where's the belt buckle and the stupid hair on the Cactar?
Yeah,
Nomura obviously didn't design this one.
This is also a former intern trying to escape. Yeah. And today we are going to be talking about the Final Fantasy VII Remake demo. In particular, Eric's going to be giving his impressions with actually playing the demo. Me and Stan have watched the demo, so we're going to be able to conversate a little bit, but we're primarily going to be relying on Eric's thoughts and impressions with the demo. And then possibly earlier, but most likely next podcast, me and Stan will give our thoughts on the remake demo as well. So lots of remake stuff coming in the next 2 podcasts.
Start off as Cloud. Everything feels great. I love how you can evade things. I like how you can guard against things. You watch the enemy's movements and, strategically plan around that. And I thought that's pretty great. And it has these cool modes. But as soon as I got Barrett in the party, things already started feeling out of hand. If I want to use the guard Scorpion fight as an example, there was so much going on that you have to do between the two characters. And I don't mean too much, but what I'm saying is to get the guard Scorpion to a staggered point, it felt like I had to rub my stomach and pat my head at the same time to successfully transition between Cloud and Barrett and getting the staggering going, while at the same time dodging all these mechanics that are happening. So it's expecting me to go through the menu. Even though the menu freezes, you still have to pay attention to what's going around you in the area as soon as you're done with it. And that, I don't know if I just need to get better at the game, but that felt so chaotic.
It's kind of interesting from what you're telling me, because I wonder if their process with designing this demo was, okay, let's make it a little bit more difficult than it's going to be in the game, because the last thing we want, and the biggest concern we've heard from people with this game going action-oriented, is it's going to turn into just a bunch of button mashing and, no strategy. So maybe they want to show in the demo that the game does have a lot of strategy, but maybe it's tweaked a little too far. But maybe they know people have to sit with this for the next month, so they want to give you a well-rounded view of the battle system as much as possible in the demo.
Yeah, I'll give the combat credit. It doesn't feel too button mashy. There are times where it may a little bit, but it does encourage you to take advantage of the staggering system, even on simple enemies, to quickly take them out. There was just a lot of times it felt chaotic, and like I said, maybe playing the game more I'll understand things a little better, and maybe there are things I can do that I didn't understand before that'll make it a lot easier.
Yeah.
But first time playing the demo, I had a pretty rough time with the boss itself. I constantly had to keep pouring potions and cure magic on me.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that it's not too easy, because that was something I was concerned about too. Like, if I had to choose, I'd rather it be slightly cumbersome. Maybe I might have to sit with it a little bit, as opposed to, I'm glad to hear that you didn't just like button mash your way through the entire demo without even, thinking about it.
Cloud plants the bomb, the boss fight happens, you run away, and while we're midway running out, the bomb goes off, but it was a dud. Like, it wasn't big enough, the explosion wasn't big enough to damage the reactor. So President Shinra's been watching on a security camera the entire time, and this act here, and he decides to have the robots come in and destroy the reactor and blow it up, thinking, even though Avalanche thinks they did it, they didn't. I'm like, what?
Oh, so they didn't actually? Because I've watched like the footage that was leaked online, but I dipped in and out at certain parts. So you're telling me that they didn't actually blow up the reactor, like they thought they did, but they didn't?
I think it just damaged it, but it didn't actually destroy it.
I think they're trying to tone it back because they don't want the main party killing all these people.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about it yet. I'm gonna have to play it. And
did.
So, like, yeah, I get your point, Eric, is that whether they did or didn't, they intended to, or they, so it's kind of like, you didn't actually do it, but
you tried.
Yeah, in your mind you did. I'm gonna stand on this. I'm not sure how I necessarily feel about that, because on one hand, I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, it makes sense why Square would do that. They're trying to like downplay them like being actual terrorists in this day and age. That makes sense. You don't want that. You don't want a controversy. I get it. I'm like kind of okay with it, actually. Like, that's kind of a smart move, Square. If you could change anything, change that. But, and I think, Stan, you kind of brought this up a couple weeks ago, I think, but I'm not sure how that plays with Barrett's character arc, because, he has that moment in the original where he's like, I hurt so many people. And I mean, if he comes to terms with the fact that, like, oh, he didn't, maybe they could still have that moment, and maybe it's something like, I wanted to hurt so many people, but it's not quite the same thing,
Yeah, they've kind of taken the edge off of it, is kind of how I feel about it right now.
I don't think it's like ruined yet. I have to see how it plays out, but it is different.
It's kind of the same idea, like the same, like he didn't think of the consequences, right?
Right.
But they've definitely taken the edge off of it for the audience, because the audience is now aware that the destruction caused is not fully their fault as it was before,
Right.
It kind of makes sense from Shinra's perspective. Like, from Shinra, it's kind of still true to like how they acted in the original, right? Because later on they drop an entire plate, right, to try and destroy Avalanche, and they also intend to frame that on Avalanche in order to, make people afraid and like more reliant on Shinra, right, for their safety. I think that they wanted to do it for sales reasons or kind of reception of the game reasons, but the justification they're using is, well, this is consistent with the Shinra company, right, or President Shinra as a character from the original, right? This is something that he does later on. We're just kind of moving that plot point forward and like kind of seeding it in the very beginning of the game.
I think this actually kind of works now that I'm thinking about it, and I think everything we're saying here is true. It is going to make the second plate fall. It's going to be less of a surprise. Yeah, they're downplaying it, obviously, because it would be a weird controversy if that became a controversy in this day and age. Why do you have the heroes as terrorists? They're probably looking at just the current climate, so that makes sense. But honestly, like, I think it kind of helps in a way, the plate falling on, the Shinra sabotaging his own city, because that was quite the leap before. Like, oh, I'm just going to blow the plate up and just like destroy this whole sector, right? Whereas like if they kind of early establish that he's willing to do this type of stuff, someone that's just playing the game new, they're probably not going to think that he's going to do it to such a great degree. That probably wouldn't even think to them. You might think like, oh, they'll just, sabotage them some other way, make them look bad in some other way, but not as an entire sector. That would be crazy. And like planting the seeds there, like, oh, like he did this in the past. Like it's kind of actually in my mind a good clue like for somebody that has not played the game.
It's like a foreshadowing thing now, right?
Yeah, and it kind of makes the second event actually make a little bit more sense because it was kind of set up for the character. But like it's overwhelmingly positive. I will sympathize with the way Eric felt on the last podcast, because he literally, like, guys, like he got to play the demo like one time, and then he came on here and he was like, I was a little frustrated the first time, but I might get used to it. I was feeling slightly the same way, but I got through it, and then I played it again, and like it just clicked with me. Like I really, really liked the gameplay, and I think the biggest thing that stood out for me, and this is kind of a wacky thing to bring up, but I've really felt like the tutorial setup for the demo was really well done. It was really well paced. A lot of times with JRPGs, you get stuck in this rut where they just like bombard you with like a wall of text or like pages, right? And it's like throwing at you like what every single button does in every single scenario. And like I'm getting stressed out, like wiping sweat off my brow. Like I feel like I need to like take notes. Did you walk away with the same impression, Stan, or?
Well, I actually thought the certain parts of the tutorial was a little hand-holdy.
I love it. I mean,
in their credit, like we didn't get like a use the left joystick to move the character type of thing, which I like.
Right. We didn't have Final Fantasy 12 where, Bosch is like at the gate and he's like, press X to open the gate.
Yeah. But we did get like a little prompt that said like push triangle to open a chest, and if it says hold triangle, you need to hold the button down.
Yeah.
And I was like, really?
But the thing was, it was like 3 sentences, maybe 4, and it was 1 page. They didn't drag it out. It wasn't like they put a chest in front of you and then you had to hold triangle, and if you didn't hold triangle, like a Moogle came out and it's like, no, try again. Like
that's true.
It was there if you wanted it, but you could just skip it real quick if you didn't. One thing that I really liked was when you use a potion, like the Scorpion has a chance of interrupting you, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas in 15, that was like that was such a hole in the gameplay, because you would use a potion and there would be this like little animation and like you were invincible for like a couple of seconds, and you could really use that to your advantage to like get out of a particular boss hit. Just use a item. You don't even need it, right? Just 99 potions. You don't need it. You have 8,000 HP, but whatever.
Yeah, and you could do it at any time. Now, if you use an item, it costs you an ATB bar.
How did you feel about that?
I think it's a good change.
Initially, I didn't like it because I was just like, dude, like I want to use a potion and I can't. Like I feel like it should have been like a half a ATB bar. But once I played it again, I was like, no, this adds a lot of depth to it. Like, I'm glad. Like, there's a cost to doing this.
Right. Yeah, because that means if you're not playing good enough on defense, right, you're taking damage or more damage than you would be. So you have to use a potion, which costs you an ATB bar, which is like a resource you otherwise could have used to do like very high damage to the enemy. Right, because the attacks like Braver and Focus Thrust and Cloud's Fire Spell, those are like as strong as his full chain combo, if not even stronger, depending on if the enemy is staggered or whatever. Right. His chain combo does like, I think like 200 damage or something to like a regular grunt. Like if you land all 5 hits, and then Braver does like 300 damage. Right. So if you're having to use a lot of potions and heal a lot, which I think is maybe what makes the battle seem like very long for people, is they're kind of playing offense all the time and then they have to heal, like the Scorpion boss for a lot of people feels very tanky, and I think it's because you're having to use a lot of potions and then you're having to build your ATB back up just to do significant damage,
Yeah.
So it's kind of a trade-off. Like in FF15, you have the far extreme where you can just mash the attack button and really just like if anything goes wrong, it's like, well, just pop a high potion or whatever, and then just keep going. But in this game, it's like if you are having to do that all the time, then the battles are going to drag out longer, right? Because your abilities that do all this massive damage are tied to that same resource, that ATB bar.
I can't believe they actually nailed it. I've always had such a problem with action-oriented combat that try to have like a party structure. It works pretty good in MMOs, but obviously that's because you have your own party, everyone's controlling the characters or whatever, and plus it's still pretty turn-based kind of. But like an actual action RPG, once you have like a party, it just, a lot of times it just doesn't work. I've talked about this before, but characters are just spamming their magic and using all their MP. They're spamming your items. They're not doing what they need to do. They won't go on the defense when they need to go on the defense. They're being counterproductive to the boss battle. And in this, I didn't like it. I really felt like it was very appropriate. Like Barrett was helping me, but he wasn't just blowing off lightning like left and right, like for no apparent reason. And he wasn't just throwing potions left and right.
Yeah, they kind of avoid that problem, right? By tying everything to that bar, and then only the player can decide how to use the bar.
Yeah, it's like they went in the opposite direction, right? For like a 15, 20 years, they've been, like, people have been trying to, like, automate combat and, like, have, the gambit system or whatever you want to call it, whatever that game intends to call just controlling the AI, the other character. And in Final Fantasy VII Remake, they're just like, no, you're going to have to choose. People will talk about the demo, and usually it's pretty overwhelming praise, but they'll say, Square likes to act like this is a blend between ATB, like a traditional ATB system or a weight system, really, I think is what they're getting at, or turn-based system, and, an action combat system, and they're like, no, like, that's just marketing speak, like, this is a total action combat system. I'm like, yeah, I see where they're coming from. It definitely is, but like the core of the battle system functions very similarly to, the original system where you had to, it was a series of waiting until you were able to move, right? And until then, trying to stay alive.
Yeah. So instead of just waiting, right, until it's your turn, you're playing this little action mini game that determines how you kind of get to use your turn, I guess, if that makes sense, right? Because if you're playing this little game where you choose like, okay, do I dodge roll, do I block, or do I attack? And if you attack too much, well, then when it's your turn, right, you have to heal, right? Because you were just attacking all the time and you never chose to defend. Or if you are just always dodging, right, well, then it's going to take a lot longer for your turn to come, right? But the balance of it is, well, you probably didn't take much damage then if you were dodging all the time. So by the time it is your turn, you can do something cool. You know, like.
Well, not only the fact that during that scorpion fight, you know, I wasn't using magic like Cloud said to do. Mm-hmm. And Cloud was like, I thought I told you to use magic. And Barrett was like, I thought you were full of shit.
Yeah. That was great.
I was just like, I just laughed. Like, that was so funny.
And then, like you said, he can grab the characters. When I was playing it, the Scorpion boss, he grabbed Cloud, right? And Cloud just kind of, he kind of struggles on his own. He just kind of like makes it like a grunt. He's like, you know, like trying to get out of there. And Barrett is like, is that your way of asking for help?
Yeah,
it was pretty funny.
But one other thing that I noticed that I thought was really well done is some of the side comments, a lot of times were, and you know, they did this in 15 as well, but they were in relation just to the environment, not necessarily the battle. And some of it was some really good stuff. For example, when they first get into the reactor, right, there was some excellent world building where the dialogue felt really natural, because Barrett says to Cloud something along the lines of like, man, what if you fell into the Mako?
Oh,
you think you'd fall to the center of the planet? And Cloud responds, no, the pump would suck you up, right? Like I'm like, dude, that's like a very natural like thing. Like, oh my God, I'm looking at this. It's like an ocean or whatever. What if I fell in there? And then Cloud just naturally responds, the pump would suck you up. That feels very natural to tell the player what the Mako reactor is doing, right? It's sucking the Mako up out of the planet. And it's not like Barrett's like, hey, what does this thing do? Cloud's like, well, you see, it sucks the Mako out of the reactor. And it's like, they're sitting in a reactor, right? Like, that would be dumb. So,
it would, yeah.
So like, I felt like there was moments like that were really well done. And then also later, after you beat the Scorpion fight, there's some awesome body language, which is something the original really excelled at in a dramatic way, right? Because the characters would have to be excessively exaggerated because they couldn't show facial expressions or anything like that. But there's this scene after the Scorpion fight where Cloud and Barrett are in the elevator, and the elevator's going up or down or whatever. I think it's going up, and Barrett's like, come on. Like he's like hoping the door's going to open, and he's like freaking out, right? And then the camera pans to Cloud, and he's just sitting there with his arms crossed with his eyes closed. And I'm like, dude, that's such a good way to just show Cloud's character without like, you know, like overemphasizing it, you know, because I'm thinking, I actually kind of like 13, but I'm thinking of Snow in the beginning, right? Where he's just like, I'm a hero. And like, right? And it's just like, come on, guys, I'm a hero. You know, and it like drives everyone nuts. I'm like, this is just like Cloud not saying anything. He's just arms crossed, eyes closed, just like the freaking reactor's about to blow up, and he's just like the elevator's like shaking, and he's just calm, no worries. Like it just showed like, okay, like I'm experienced, right? So I thought that was a really, really nice touch as well that I really, really liked.
Yeah, and in that moment, Barrett he looks down and he like kind of unclenches his fist. I think he realizes like he's got to be more collected, right? Like Cloud is, because he like you said, he's kind of freaking out, like hoping the elevator's going to get them up. But then he looks back and he sees that Cloud is like, you know, cool as a cucumber or whatever. And then he looks and he's got his fist clenched, and then he kind of like he opens his fist, and like you said, with no dialogue, they're able to kind of convey a lot. In that scene. So that was definitely a good.
In the original game, after you do the first bombing mission, Jessie says, "Oops." Then she says, "Hey, look at the news! What a blast!" And it's just captioned like this. It says, "Think it was all because of my bomb, but all I really did was just make it like the computer told me. Oh no, I must have made a miscalculation somewhere." So this is an optional piece of dialogue that Jessie has in the original, and some people are looking at this as, see, the original like hinted that, you know, they didn't do it. Like she didn't intend to have such a large blast. it wasn't intentional. She kind of doubts whether or not, it was her bomb, because she's like, you think it was just because of my bomb? All I did was really make it like the computer told me. I must have made a miscalculation. So people feel like the original, it's canon that Shinra did it. It just didn't show it. And that if you were intuitive enough, you would have put the pieces together. I think people are reinterpreting this in a very fun way and cool way. But I think people are really taking this optional dialogue for a run. Because when I read that dialogue, I initially thought she had never created a bomb before. And this is the first time the bomb went off. And she was like, wow, that was a lot bigger than I thought. After the bomb, Barrett says, like, nobody's complaining about the size of the explosion. People want to know about their pay, right? And Barrett's saying something like, oh, this will keep the planet going a little bit longer. Like, later, like, he's talking about the next mission is going to be even bigger. When they get to Tifa's bar, Tifa's not like, what the hell, Barrett? You were just supposed to disable it. You weren't supposed to, like, blow up the whole facility. This is the only time you have anything that could actually be interpreted that way. And, like, the end of Barrett's character arc actually addresses the fact that he did this, or he planned this, and it was a terrible thing, right? So, and I guess in the remake, they could still do that by just saying, like, he thought he did it, or because he tried to do that, like, the repercussions of that. But I don't know. Well, I just, when I see this popping up online, I'm like, you guys are, it's not, I don't even see the purpose of believing this, because it could still be a good change. It could still be a very effective change.
Yeah, when I saw this, and we're replaying the game just recently, and so I was looking for something like this. Is there anything in there that hints that maybe Shinra, that Mako Reactor 1 was an inside job, but this, it pops out, but you can't look at this and say for sure this means that Shinra blew up their own reactor. It is possible that you could read this and then interpret like, oh, their bomb shouldn't have caused that much destruction at all. But then Jessie herself says, I must have made a miscalculation. And based on her character in the original game, she's kind of a klutz, or like a screw up.
Yeah, the ID thing failed too.
Yeah, her ID badge failed. Like the ID cards, the fake IDs. In the bombing mission, they've recontextualized it in the remake, so there's like explosions happening and debris falling down. But like, you climb up when you're escaping the reactor in the original, you have to save her because like her leg fell through like the grating or whatever. She's like, oh no,
stuck.
My leg.
Yeah,
my leg got stuck, and she would have died, right, if you weren't there to help. So that's what I see this quote as. It's more of like, I must have made a miscalculation. So it's like further emphasizing that this character is really in over her head, basically, right?
I think that just for fun, like, this is a fun way to interpret this dialogue, and it's kind of cool in that people are able to find dialogue where you could reinterpret it to suit the remake. I think that's really cool, but I don't think that was the original intent, at least in the game we got. It's possible they were playing with this idea and development and just didn't go roll with it.
They didn't flesh it out, yeah.
But I, like, for the game that we got and that we played, and like the full scale of Barrett's character arc and just, everything going on with that, I never got that impression.
There is one thing I just remembered.
Okay.
There's a part where the Avalanche members hack a door, and Cloud goes through first, and the door closes behind him.
Barrett's like, wait.
You have to fight 4 guys there. And they say, like, give it up or something, or like, this is the end of the line. And then Cloud, like, very calmly walks to the middle of the room, and he pulls out his sword, and he says, that's my line. And like, it's very cheesy, but like,
but they turned the volume up on the music, and like,
yeah, but but it works in that like somebody trying to be cool, you know, like kind of how Cloud is, right? Like he's playing the part, right? They would hear that and think like, yeah, this is what like a cool person would say, like in this scene, right? But actually, it comes off as like pretty cheesy. Like, I don't know if that was intentional or not, or I don't know how Nojima writes his stuff. You know, maybe he wrote that and he was like, yeah, that's cool. But like to me, it felt like 90s action movie star type of line, you know, like something like Arnold Schwarzenegger would say, you know, like in the right before a big fight scene or something.
Yeah, I love how they just like casually turn up the music too, like it's like all bombastic and stuff, like it was just like an action flick. I agree with you. Like I felt like it was appropriate for the moment, like and true to the character.
I think they're in a rock and roll place with this because they release Advent Children, and this has created what people expect what modern FF7 should look like. And then you had the PS3 demo, showcase demo that came out that showed what the PS3 is capable of from Square Enix, and they used the opening of FF7 as a demo. And when that happened, people all of a sudden went, it's a remake, and they're like, no, it's not a remake, it's just it's just a concept, it's just showing off the engine. They're like, remake. Yep. So it's created this high expectation, and they have to meet that high, they believe they have to meet that high expectation to meet the demand of these people that wanted a very realistic remake of FF7 even during the PS3 era.
But it's interesting that you brought up, you know, the fact that they had the tech demo, they had Advent Children, so there's all these expectations of what it would look like, because they actually brought up, Nomura did Advent Children in this, and he was talking about, you know, 10 years ago, I think it was actually longer, like 13 years ago, when Advent Children came out, but he was like, that was cutting edge technology for them then. And we always imagined that this game could look like this, you know, Advent Children, just as a game. But the technology wasn't there yet. But then they're showing footage of, you know, 7 Remake now compared to Advent Children. And it looks way better than the movie. You know,
yeah.
And I
the in-game graphics actually look better than that movie from 10 years ago. It's crazy.
Yeah, and when I saw that movie, I initially thought like, that looks real. Those look like real people. Like, you know? So, like, they've really gone, like, to town with the graphics on this. Nomura was talking about when he first was approaching the 7 Remake and trying to kind of get an idea about, you know, what's his mindset going into this. And he said that he actually watched people playing Final Fantasy VII on, like, I think YouTube, but he said online, like Let's Play videos, and he was just watching people stream the game, and he watched people play the whole thing, and he was like listening to their commentary and stuff. And before I get to my main point with this, I just want to say that must be really weird, right? If to think like, you know, while you're streaming Final Fantasy VII, Tetsuya Nomura is like one of the people in the audience, just like, oh, is that what you thought about Advent Children? You know? But anyways, but he was sitting there listening to people while they were playing this game, and he noted about Midgard was that he thought that it was well paced. He forgot how well paced it was, and you know the pacing of the story, but you don't actually get to see the top plate until like near the end of the game, and even then you only get to see a few parts, right? So that's where he was starting to think like, okay, like, wouldn't it be better if we got to like see more of the city, right? And that was kind of like the inspiration, was him watching other people play it and realizing like they really liked, you know, running around Midgard and seeing what else was there. Like after you leave Midgard, where can you go to get back? And he thought like, okay, like this is a huge city. We should be able to explore this. One other thing that I saw that I thought was interesting, that's kind of clued me in a little bit with the Sephiroth, bringing in Sephiroth in such a big way in this game. Whereas in the original, you don't really see Sephiroth till the end of Midgard. It's been a source of controversy among fans. Was this really needed to bring Sephiroth in like this? A lot of people really enjoyed the reveal. Katase told him, when they were going over the remake, that when they started development, that he wanted the game to feel both modern to new players, but nostalgic to old players, but also familiar to gamers who may not have played Final Fantasy VII, but knew about it, such as Cloud and Sephiroth, right? So therefore, he wanted these gamers to feel on board with the game and know what FF7 was about after just this game. He wanted wanted everyone that played the game to not feel like they were in Group B that was not a real Final Fantasy VII fan. He wanted them to get the oomph of what Final Fantasy VII is about from playing this one game. And so during this, they're showing all this video footage of Sephiroth and Cloud fighting, right? And Midgard, or, just different images with Sephiroth and the fire and everything like that. And the fact that he specifically mentioned Sephiroth, to me, this tells me, that's one of the primary reasons why is Katase, just basically like we thought, Sephiroth and Cloud are just these iconic images known to people that haven't even played the game. And they want that there so that people that haven't even played the game can get excited. And I don't know if that makes me feel better, but to actually hear somebody say it, I thought was interesting.
Well, what's the best way to get someone going through the genuine FF7 experience?
Play the whole game?
You actually do it the way that the story originally did it. It's we want all the tropes of Final Fantasy VII all in the first game, just so everyone can associate themselves and catch up real quick. It's why don't you just instead, if you really got to show Sephiroth, if you really got to do it, just have him at the very end. Just the sword in the back of the president's back. And you just see a spirit of him or something like that. Just go off and vanish, show some visual of him. And then that will create mystery intrigue for the second game for players coming in for the first time. Because the clear established antagonists are the people of Shinra, as far as we know. So just set Sephiroth up for the second game. Don't make him the villain all of a sudden of this first game, because he wasn't the villain at all until that very moment at the very end of the Midgard segment, where he actually becomes relevant. Just to get people caught up with Final Fantasy VII, I think is a complete disservice to the intention of the original story.
Well, I mean, we'll have to see how they do it. They might do it in a way that still feels satisfying. I mean, conceptually, I agree with you. If it ends up not being as good, that wasn't a good decision. That's not a very good reason, for sure. The fact that it's this well-known imagery that they feel like it needs to be in there. I don't, that's basically, in so many words, saying marketing, right?
Flashing the keys.
Come
on, get your Sephiroth.
It is going against the original story to have the character revealed so early. And my guess is, like you said, it's for marketing, and it's a gamble that they're taking. They're predicting that the new people who buy this game who have never played the original, a lot of them probably know of Sephiroth and Cloud and these characters. Otherwise, why would they buy this game, right? So the general gaming audience that's only kind of loosely familiar with the story is not going to be angry if they make that kind of change, right? Where they introduce the villain of the overarching story earlier on than before. The people who are going to be angry or disappointed is going to be us, right? Yeah. The OG fans. But they're confident that they have our purchase regardless, right?
And
it's the new people that they got to hook in, hook, line, and sinker. And the best way to do that is to kind of have the most recognizable aspects of the story added earlier rather than later. Because I can imagine if they didn't, if they treated the story as it was originally, and Sephiroth didn't appear until part 2, you'd have a lot of people who got into FF7 with this game, and they'd be saying, so I gotta buy another game just to see the villain, you know, like, of this game, right? That would be disappointing to people, essentially.
Like, I totally agree with you, but the thing is, I feel like for me to like specifically say whether it was a good idea or not is I got to see what they do with it. I'll give them that. Like, until I see how it's implemented and what they do with the story, I can't say that it's a bad execution. I can just say that what was originally there was really, really good. Inside Final Fantasy VII Remake. This is kind of a promotional piece where we're interviewing the developers, or, you know, Square is kind of having the developers talk about making the Final Fantasy VII Remake, you know, where they're focusing on the story and the characters this particular round. And there was a lot of really interesting stuff in there for us to get into. And we've kind of pulled out some interesting quotes that we're just going to kind of go over and read. The first one here is largely focusing on Katase, where he's talking about forgetting little details of the world, right? And that he actually went back and replayed Final Fantasy VII before working on the game. So he replayed the game in its entirety just to refresh his memory, you know, and upon replaying the game, Katase reflected on the game's narrative, and he was surprised that the Midgard section, how short it was compared to what he remembered. He was really surprised by this brisk pace that you went through the city, and he just didn't remember it being that short, right? So he said, because of that, this is Katase speaking here, because of that, in the remake, I want people to experience the iconic city of Midgard closer to how I had remembered it, as a much deeper and more expansive location. So we have put great effort into going even deeper into Midgard in the new game, adding in new elements and extra layers of detail to now show more of this world than we did in the original.
It's interesting that he said that it's all based on how he felt at the time, right? So when he played the game at the time, he felt like it was Midgard was a much bigger game, or a much bigger location, right? Than it actually turns out to be. Because in reality, you know, we've all just replayed the game recently. Like, you can beat it in, you know, 5 hours, and that's even if you're taking your time, you know. Right. So, but when he played it the first time, and I think we can also agree with this, it didn't feel like it was 5 hours. It probably felt a lot longer.
To me, what I got from it was that in his mind, it was just impactful, right? So, like, when he thinks back to the game, he thinks back to the Midgard portion and the story sequences that happened there as being much larger, just because of the way it resonated with him, even being the director of the game, and how much story content is pulled from there in, you know, Crisis Core, and then, you know, the other compilation media. And so in his mind, because this was such a big part of the game, we have like the dress up scene, we have basically the death of President Shinra, you know, all these big things. We meet many members of our party there. I mean, a lot of events kind of start here that propelled the whole game, but it's just a lot of big moments in that part of the game. And I think that just having that amount of stuff in your mind when you think about Final Fantasy VII, right? Usually I'm not thinking about like the Bone Village, you know, or going through the Sleeping Forest when I'm thinking about Final Fantasy VII. Usually I'm thinking about the Midgard portion, right? I mean, I think from that perspective, he's looking at it like, wow, this was only 6 hours. It was very impactful. It was only 6 hours. So I think that with the remake, he's looking at it like, okay, when people go back to replay this, I want this to be as big as they remember it, meaning from his own perspective also, right? That because this was so impactful, I was surprised that it was only 6 hours. Since we're remaking this, it would be a little anticlimactic for a AAA remake if the Midgard portion was, again, only 6 hours. I mean, he thinks that maybe people might be like, well, why didn't we get to see this huge city? Why didn't we get to see all these areas? You know, this was a chance to kind of delve into Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge. Like, this is a AAA remake. why didn't we get to see more of that, and like, so I can kind of see where he's coming from, that like they just wanted to make it bigger, I don't know if it needed to be 40 hours big,
what we're getting. So,
but I can kind of get.
So the key things that we got from Midgard was that there's an upper class of people who like live pretty decent to good lives. Then you got people from the slums who are, the low class men that are oppressed by Shinra. But we get all the ideas of what kind of antagonists we're coming up against. And I think Midgard in the original 7 did everything already to present to the player the stakes and what type of place Midgard is already. I don't think you had to explore every sector to get that idea.
No,
we got a pretty good idea of how the slums are, like with like the wall market and the Sector 7, with Tifa's bar and all the other cruddy looking places. And then we see what the high life is for a little bit when we're doing like the bombing missions and infiltrating Shinra. I'm not saying you can't expand upon it, and I'm actually curious to see how they expand upon it, but I guess we'll find out if we did truly need Midgard expanded or not.
Saying the main character in the game is Cloud Strife, and as far as his character and personality goes, Cloud has often appeared in a number of other games since Final Fantasy VII, and people have a strong image of him from those as a very cool and collected character, a complete and flawless hero. So this is Toriyama talking here, and this to me is one example of a Square developer saying things that fans have been saying for years, right? And it was a major concern of mine that they would be getting Cloud's character incorrect, initially when this game was first announced, because prior to this remake, with Square's appearances of Cloud and other types of media, with Advent Children and Kingdom Hearts, like he was a much different Cloud than he was in the actual game, right? And so it seems to me like this is kind of refreshing that we see a Square developer talking about Cloud in the way that we as fans have talked about Cloud from the original game. Like this sounds like the original PlayStation 1 Cloud. Like he's a little insecure, he's not quite sure of himself, he has a lot of like inner turmoil about his identity. He clings to Soldier's like badass identity as like a safety net, and like through the game, not everyone's buying it. Like Barrett doesn't buy it. Tifa has her doubts. Like you even have like Sid, who at one point in the game, after Cloud leaves the party, says, "I didn't trust that shifty SOB anyways," or better off. So like not everyone in the party's buying it, and I'm just glad that like Square is. At least right here, we have Toriyama kind of like understanding the difference, right? And I think just like Stan, you were going to point out, Nojima kind of like tacks on to that when he says about Cloud, he used to be part of a special military unit, and since he was a child, he has had a strong need to be accepted by people. He felt that he was special, but as a child had nothing to prove that, so he wanted to make something of himself and choose the path of joining Soldier. It seems to me like they're approaching Cloud correctly, and of all the things I think they would have gotten wrong when I'm thinking about when this game was first announced, this was like one of the easiest things I thought they were going to mess up.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to sound strange to say this, but like reading that quote like makes me hype for the game, because that's like one of my biggest I guess you would say worries, like you were saying, like they won't get the characters right because it's been so long since the original game came out, and also you have very strong creative voices like Sakaguchi, right, who is not involved in the remake, and so you just don't know if they can pull it off, when all the pieces are not there, when all the creative minds are not behind this project. But hearing that coming from Toriyama, Toriyama saying like, well, some people understand him from how he is in the other games, and then Nojima just kind of reiterating like what his character is actually like from the original. and saying like that's how it's going to be in this game. That's like very encouraging, I would say.
It is good to hear because I really like Cloud as a character so much for so many reasons. It's so interesting to see. It's like Cloud has such a perfect front to him that like he's a badass, wields a big sword, can take on anyone. Used to be part of Soldier, all that kind of cool stuff, and he's so iconic and you want to be like him. And then you find out you actually relate to him more after you find out that most of it was a front. I mean, of course he's a fantastic fighter. A lot of it's due to the Mako stuff that was injected into him. But like overall at the end of the day, he was, in his eyes, a failure as a person. That was such a great, complicated character, and I absolutely loved everything about it. And then when all that's resolved and Cloud accepts who he is, then we get this weird interpretation of him, which I usually like to call Nomura Cloud. Because the character feels a lot different than he did in the original game, like even in the Kingdom Hearts games. As he mentioned, I mean, he looked cool and everything, but that's like the most you could really say about it. So, like you said, I'm glad that they're, going back to and studying why these characters are as great as they were. So, I am glad they are. I agree with you. I'm glad they're taking that into account.
So we have another quote here. So Nojima, he's saying, again, discussing Cloud, it says, "There's something that I want to tell people, but I'm also a little nervous about saying. For this game, I have gone much deeper into the inner psychology of Cloud, the main character. In the original, I depicted him as a cool and stylish character. However, this time, he can miss the mark and be a little cringeworthy at times. His cool facade can often slip because he wants people to accept him and respect him. He puts on a front." So, and this is kind of what we're talking about here, but he says, so when he doesn't know something, he just goes, "Not interested." I have written him in a way that makes you think that not interested might not be a cool thing to say, but can sometimes be a bit lame. That's something I really want to convey. That is a personal challenge I set myself, but at the same time, I am nervous about whether the fans will accept that or not.
Didn't he kind of already do that in the original 7? Because I know I think there's certain points in the game where they create a juxtaposition for him.
Yeah, that's how I felt about him. So I'm not sure who he's talking about when he says whether fans will accept that or not, because I think the 3 fans right here are like, yes, that's Cloud. Thank you.
I think he's speaking to like the Advent Children fans.
Yeah, the newer fans, the fans who got introduced to him in Advent Children or Kingdom Hearts and stuff like that.
He's kind of speaking like, oh, we're going to do something pretty crazy this time, and we're actually going to do the kind of character that Cloud was before we did a lot of changes to him. I don't know how the fans are going to feel about this.
What if it's like, thanks. That's exactly what we want, actually.
Toriyama talking about Barrett. He says he's a very dynamic person and is always aggressively pushing forward. As a leader, he feels he must lead from the front and pull everyone along with him, but he is more the impetus type who gets heated up and can be led by his emotions. So the people around him wind up desperately supporting him. Stan, I think you had something you wanted to bring up here.
Well, yeah, that's a pretty accurate description of kind of the Barrett that we saw in the demo so far, right? With the whole, easily gets riled up with his emotions, which is, I hope that that's really like always in regard to, the Shinra, right? Since that ties in heavily to his past, you know. I don't want to see him like all bombastic all the time.
Well, that's exactly how I felt with him. Is that like he needs to breathe.
Yeah,
for a few minutes. It's like he can have calm moments. Like even in the elevator, he has to overexert himself. I understand he's in the heat of the moment, but the elevator scene is supposed to be the moment for the characters to breathe before they go to the next part of the mission. And this is the point where he should be more calm and waiting. Maybe he'll get a little impatient, but like this is the point like where he just like calmly talks to Cloud about everything, and then maybe he'll get mad at the end about something, but like he's still over the top all the time, and I really hope this is not something that happens throughout the entire game. Like I hope that like he has a moment to just calm down.
Yeah, I think you guys are right. I mean, I think that as long as the anger's primarily drawn at Shinra, right, and Barrett's not just losing his mind all the time for no reason, or he's just like, you know, thrown off as like a loose cannon. You know, if somebody bumps into him in the alleyway, he starts getting all like mad and stuff. Like it's gonna seem a little off, right? But as long as the anger is directed at Shinra, I think that's going to, as long as it makes sense. Me and Stan had a slight different viewpoint on the elevator scene. I was more on Eric's side when we were talking about it on that one. But as long as it makes sense to his story, I think it's going to work. I mean, because as we know, I mean, Shinra took everything from him. Shinra destroyed his entire town and like, you know, everyone he cared about. And then later, like Barrett has to live through that again with the plate dropping. So it just makes sense that he would have a tremendous amount of rage, and like he almost like is just equally mad at himself for making what he sees as such a stupid decision. So I think as long as they're taking the anger through that lens, I think it's going to work really well. But you know, just portraying him as just angry in general, like
that's definitely I was going to say that's definitely a fear, like going into the game and only having seen what we've seen so far, because it's a very like anime writing thing, I guess, to have like a character and like assign them like a thing, like a personality trait. Like this character's, you know, gets really angry all the time at the push of a button, or this character is always like you know, infatuated with the main character or whatever, and that's like their thing. And so like in every scene, like that's how their interactions play out. So hopefully we'll get a little bit more of a, you know, three-dimensional characters, because, you know, that's how they are in the original. There's a little bit more depth to them. They're not, you know, they're not like amazingly, you know, they're not Game of Thrones characters, right? But they do have a little more depth to them than like a typical anime character that you would kind of see these days. But the way I saw Barrett is kind of like, he is like kind of that anger is kind of like underneath him, right? And then he's like, as they were going through the mission, he was calm, but as he got further down the reactor, he started getting more and more and more like amped up and agitated, right? Because they're getting closer to the objective, right? And then, you know, he's in the elevator and he's trying to kind of guilt trip Cloud to like be on his side and like feel the same way as him. But Cloud wasn't having it, and that just made him push even further. You know,
I can see the way you're approaching that.
Yeah, and then on the scene later when they go back up the elevator, he's kind of still like amped up. But then, right, you have that moment where he looks back at Cloud, and then he's like able to kind of, like, you know,
calm
like
down.
put that back in the bottle for now, right?
Yeah.
You know, now's not the time to be angry. Like, look at Cloud here, and that's because after the Scorpion, you know, he kind of he respects Cloud all of a sudden, right after the Scorpion boss fight.
Right.
So he's able to kind of like, okay, you know, maybe I got to keep it together.
Yeah, I can see how you approach that with the remake and kind of, you know, see the way they're portraying that character. I guess to me, like when we first meet Barrett, like he's kind of like the obviously the leader of the party, but he's also like that glue that's keeping everyone together. I get the sense that he tries really hard to appear calm and collect, but he's under so much pressure that sometimes it just like it bursts, right? But most of the time he's able to like hold it in. And you kind of see that with like the original elevator scene in the original game. Like Barrett says something like, Cloud, don't you care? The planet's dying. And Cloud says, I don't care, or something like that, right? And Barrett turns around and you see his body shaking, and he's kind of like throwing his fist at the wall a little bit. And then he just slowly drops his arm and he like goes back to normal, and he's like, we'll be there soon. Like he's able to like keep it together, right? But obviously once you see the plate drop, he realizes like all these people are dead. He starts firing off his gun like he's losing his mind. He's freaking pissed. It's just like there's moments where it makes sense. But I can see where you're coming from, that he's just trying to get like real riled up, and like as he gets closer, he's trying to like get his adrenaline going and get focused for the mission too. So it could be approaching that from a different angle. Yeah,
it is. It's a tough thing because, like you're saying, when you saw the character as he was in FF7, and he kind of shakes his fist, you saw that as like he was getting really amped up, but then he was like able to like dial it back right there in that moment, right?
Right.
But when I saw that, I was like, oh, this guy's pissed. And then I read the rest of the dialogue as if he was like sticking it to Cloud, So it's kind of like an interpretive thing going on, I think.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things with this remake is when in a previous podcast we said that we were reading another quote from Nojima where he said there will be much less room for player interpretation, so we're already kind of seeing that, because like he has to pick one idea of several that could have been conveyed by those very simple gestures that the characters could make, because then he has to write the dialogue now in a way that is voiced, right? And the actor can't portray like a vague emotion, right? That could be interpreted different ways.
Yeah.
I mean, you can. That's very difficult, but he kind of has to pick one of those paths and take the characters down the path that he thinks most people remember the character as. I think
going on this like soapbox rant, and then him joking with Cloud throughout the whole reactor and constantly calling him a dog, and like I was just like, this seems a different take.
Yeah, it's not what you remember.
Yeah, but I still ended up liking the character by the end. So, we'll see. Nojima's saying, when Square Enix told me we were doing the Final Fantasy VII Remake, I first asked how much could we alter the dialogue, because the dialogue in the original game was designed to be read by the player. It was not voiced. I said that if the dialogue was going to be performed by actors, then I'd like to change it. And I think this is kind of, again, what you were talking about earlier. But he said I wanted to change it all because we now have these super realistic characters and performances. I've gone back and written in all the bits that were omitted because we didn't feel we needed to go into that depth with the original simpler characters.
I think that's a given. I think you kind of have to do that to make it sound natural with the dialogue. I think as long as you just successfully convey the scene like it did in the original, then changing the dialogue I think is fine, as long as you don't contradict yourself in there.
Last quote here, but we have Katase, who says, the experience that we wanted players of Final Fantasy VII Remake to have was for players who did not know or play the original to experience the surprises of the Final Fantasy VII story in the same way that the original generation of players did 23 years ago. And then another quote here, for people who do not know the original, you may be asking if Final Fantasy VII Remake just follows the story of the original. That wouldn't be a bad thing. Of course, all the memorable elements and key moments from the original have been faithfully reproduced, and you can enjoy experiencing those again. But on the other hand, there are also the new things and surprises that were not in the original, and things that people really wanted us to show. Players and fans of the original can enjoy the remake on many levels, both reliving the old stuff and rediscovering the new.
Please be excited.
Please be excited. Yeah, you should have just ended with that. Okay, so that's a full year review. How did we do? Regardless, thanks for watching, and please remember to subscribe to our channel for regular RPG podcasts and discussion videos, and we will catch you all on the next podcast. Thanks, guys. See you later.